So guys, what if Akame and Naruto were brother? Part 2. Back at the base. It had only been a couple hours since the group had returned from their missions in the capital. Naruto had taken it upon himself to take care of the little girls that he had recovered from the slaver. Boy, Najenda sure threw a fit, he said with a chuckle, staring down at the 3 little girls. When Naruto had returned with all of them, Najenda went crazy. She told him this was an assassin hideout, not a daycare. Leone, Tatsumi, and Seo were all laughing their ass off, while Naruto got scolded. But his saving grace was Akame. She had come up with a brilliant idea. She proposed that these girls train here, and be raised to be assassins. Help night raids cause, by doing the less dangerous missions. To his surprise, Najenda accepted it, and she told Naruto they would be in his, and Akame's care. He was a bit bummed out, but Naruto also was happy. He got to save these girls from a fate worse than death. He stared back at his bed, which was currently being occupied by all 3 of the little girls. Naruto had fixed them up using his sage chakra. Now they just needed rest. Man. What a day. He chucked, with a smirk. As he stared out the window, Esdeath's words kept ringing in his head. I know the Empire's corrupt, but do you really think the rebels are so much better? Their leaders aren't even of this nation. Just remember that, Naruto. Those words kept him awake for most of the night. He didn't know if he was honestly fighting the good fight here. Naruto needed to figure this out, but he couldn't now, because of the lack of sleep. Man, I am so tired. He yawned. He decided to go out of his room, and find a place to sleep. The little girls would be safe, but just in case Naruto made 2 clones to watch over them. He would have done the same for Yukari, but she's taken a liking to Najenda, so she's sleeping with her tonight. As Naruto walked through the corridors of the base, he found a small common room pushed off to the side, with a small couch. I'll see if Tatsumi has any spare blankets, he said to himself, as he walked off towards the young mon's room, while a quick shadow was following him from behind. But as he walked, little did Naruto know that something terrible was happening hundreds of miles away in the imperial capital. In the cold, dark streets of the imperial capital lower districts, a woman was slowly being choked to death by a tall man. To the side of them laid a body of a man without a head. Please don't kill me, the woman pleaded out, trying to bargain with the clearly insane individual. The man had a hood over his head, but you could clearly see his insane smile. It's your fault. Didn't your parents ever tell you not to walk out at night in the capital? He said with a snicker. Someone help me. The women screamed out to the empty streets. The man smiled sadistically, and tightened his grip. Oh, I just love it when they scream. I'll do anything, please just let me go, she screamed out, trying to get out of his iron grip. The man's smile only got bigger. Anything you say? He smiled wider. Yes, she shouted, some relief filling her eyes. She might actually be spared, and go home. Well, you see, I am kind of a talker. Would you mind having a chat with me? He asked, extended a strange blade out of his hand, without the women noticing. Yes, of course, she shouted with a now full smile. She was going to live, and be spared. The man smiled again. Haha. Wonderful. Then tell me, what's it feel like to have no body? The women never saw it coming. Huh? She asked, until her eyes went wide, and her head was completely severed. Her body fell onto the ground, like a sack of potatoes. Feeling a little tall there, he laughed, throwing the head aside, and walking off into the night. But his facial expression suddenly changed, into a scowl as he remembered the fight on the rooftops today. He had watched the entire thing unfold earlier, between Esdeath and that strange boy. My, it's been a pretty busy day in the capital. A lone man faces down Esdeath, and causes her to flee. I must find him. He snickered, walking off in search of his next victim. Naruto now laid on the couch he had found earlier. The sleepy Tatsumi was more than happy to give the blonde a spare blanket and pillow. Although Naruto kinda snickered at the boy, when he thought of him. Tatsumi had been training his ass off, along with Seo and Doya. But tomorrow would be his greatest challenge yet. He would start his training with Shield. Ah, poor Tatsumi, Naruto said, with a chuckle, shaking his head. Speaking of Shield, Kurama had taken quite a liking to her. Right now Naruto could imagine that his tailed beast was wrapped up in her arms. Hey. At least he won't be angry anymore, he said to himself. Naruto was honestly happy for the fox. If Shield was someone that Kurama enjoyed spending time with, then by all means he wouldn't mess with them. Kurama deserved this. After thinking about it for a little longer, Naruto threw his 7th Hokage Haori and flak jacket on a table to his right. Man, time for some much needed rest. He quickly jumped onto the couch, and wrapped himself in blankets. Naruto. Being Naruto, he didn't notice the shadow creeping towards him. He just fell into the world of sleep. A split second later his eyes opened. He felt disoriented and confused. The blonde looked around to see that he was no longer in the base, and it was no longer even nighttime. Instead he laid on the ground of what looked like a ravaged battlefield, at the base of a massive mountain. He looked all around him to see hundreds of bodies. What the hell is going on here? He asked himself, looking around, widening his eyes. This had to be a dream, he thought to himself. Naruto. A voice suddenly shouted out from behind him. A second later Tatsumi sprinted over, and helped him up. Huh? Tatsumi? Naruto asked, looking at the boy. Tatsumi looked battered, and bruised with blood flowing out of his forehead. Naruto, you're alive, he shouted out, giving him a quick hug. Is the Hokage safe? Another voice shouted out, as a group of what looked like Imperial soldiers ran up to all of them. This made Naruto extremely confused. Yeah, he's all right, Tatsumi exclaimed with a relieved smile. What's going on? Naruto asked, looking around at everyone. One of the Imperial troops walked forward. They hit us hard, Lord Hokage. We had no idea she'd be this powerful. Who? Naruto asked. But the soldiers never answer, as they were immediately cut down by what looked like a ray of light. Both Naruto and Tatsumi looked up to see a woman land in front of them. She wore what looked like a high-collared hime kimono which was adorned with intricate gold and purple lines and tomo running down the center and edges of the gown. She reminded the blonde of Kaguya, but only this woman had bright red eyes and short shoulder-length white hair. Hee hee. My. You boys just love to venture out in the open. You will not pass me. You will not gain entrance to Mount Genten, she shouted out, outstretching both of her hands, that caused a bright white light to form. Damn it, my eyes. Tatsumi shouted out, covering both of them. A second later the women appeared in front of them, and punched him away. Tatsumi. Naruto shouted out, looking back, but before he could fully turn the women grabbed him, and held him in the air. You Naruto. Reincarnation of Ashura. Grandson of Kaguya. I hope you're prepared, she spat out, raising the bright white light up to him. Ashura. Naruto stuttered out, looking down at her. What in the hell did his chakra brother have to do with this? Get away from him. Tatsumi shouted out, rushing her, and landed a punch straight into her face, sending her flying away from Naruto. Stand back, Naruto. I'll handle her. Tatsumi shouted back to the blonde. He lifted up his sword, and held it up in the sky. Incurcio. He screamed out. The very ground beneath him began to shake. After a few seconds Tatsumi was now wrapped into the demon armor. Although it looked quite different than when Bullet wore it. Tatsumi held up the spear that was always with Incurcio, in defiance. The women simply snickered. He moved with so much force towards her that the ground cracked as he moved. Ah! He screamed out as he charged. He would not accept defeat. But a second before he reached the women, she instantly disappeared. Huh? He asked himself, looking around. So slow, little boy. A voice said behind him. He wasn't even able to turn around. The woman used her hand to grab Tatsumi's right arm, and break it, something considered impossible to do to a wearer of Incurcio. She then used the ray of white energy in her other hand to sever his left hand. The women then grabbed him by his neck, and threw him onto the ground, and kicked him all the way back to Naruto. Tatsumi. The shinobi shouted out, kneeling down next to him. Incursio's faceplate was busted wide open, and Tatsumi's eyes were wide open with a horrified expression. You never learn, do you, boy? You're the weakest one here. Now do me a favor, and just die. She snickered, walking back over to them. Naruto was steaming with rage. He was about to get up, but Tatsumi grabbed Naruto's arm with his broken right arm. Hey, he struggled out, using Naruto's arm as a support to help him up. Huh? The woman asked, stopping in her tracks, as Tatsumi staggered up. Tatsumi? Naruto asked, wide-eyed. The boy was still going after all this. Impossible. He ripped off Incursio's helmet, and stared directly at the women, blood streaming down his messy hair. You think I am going to stand by, and let you walk all over us? Especially when mine and Akame are up there, he screamed out with valor, pointing up to the massive mountain. Naruto's eyes widened. Akame was up there? Tatsumi screamed out a battle cry, as he charged the women again. Ah! Idiotic boy, she smirked, watching him run. She prepared another shot of white energy, this time to finish the job. She grabbed the boy by his neck, and held him up in the air. Damn it. Tatsumi chalked out, as he struggled in his grasp. He knew this was over, he was prepared for this. He always was. Die. She shouted out, moving her hand towards his chest. A split second later, a yellow chakra arm came out of nowhere, and punched the woman, sending her flying back into rubble. The women instantly sprang out of the rubble, and looked back to see Naruto standing there. He was surrounded by chakra and natural energy. What? She stammered out, backing away from the boy. Tatsumi was now laying on the ground, as another copy of Naruto healed him. You will not harm my friend. The blonde roared out, forming a Rasengan in his hand. It glowed orange with his chakra. How did you get your chakra back? The women screamed out, getting angry and scared at the same time. Naruto smirked. I have no idea what you're talking about, lady, but all I know is you're going down. Impossible. My master said you wouldn't be able to get your chakra back, she roared, forming more white energy in her hands. Tatsumi looked up at Naruto. He stood so proud and confident. Tatsumi smiled. And Naruto. You grew up to everything bro expected you to be. He said quietly. The copy of the blonde smiled, while the real one took off with a sprint towards the women. Ah! He screamed out as his Rasengan got more powerful as the time went on. Die! She screamed out, the white energy getting more powerful as she moved towards him. Naruto neared her, and the energy got intense. The ground was beginning to disintegrate under them. Everything went black for the blonde. Naruto immediately jolted awake back in the small room. He looked around quickly in every direction. The blonde was breathing heavily, and had a thick layer of sweat all over his body. It was just a dream. He breathed out, looking around, with a sigh of relief. The blonde was happy none of that was real. He quickly ran to one of the nearest bathrooms, and washed his face with water. What the hell was that? Some sort of vision? He asked himself. It looked like something the great old geezer Toad said he had sometimes. Whatever it was, it couldn't have been good. She called me the reincarnation of Ashura, OWW. He yelped, feeling a strange pain on his right hand. The shinobi looked down. What he saw next made his eyes widen more. My sun mark. Naruto said, staring down at the mark the Sage of Six Paths had given him. It was now pulsating with a strange type of white energy. A second later it went away, and it left Naruto wondering. Did that have something to do with his dream? After a moment longer of wondering, he shrugged his shoulders. This was best left to be answered tomorrow. Naruto without hesitation opened the door out to the hallway, and walked right into Akame. Oh! Naruto! Akame yelped in surprise, almost falling over. Akame? What are you doing awake so late at night? Naruto asked, quickly backing away from her. After she caught herself, the assassin looked at him, with a nervous smile. I saw that you couldn't sleep, so I was going to offer you my bed. Naruto's face got so red, that it rivaled his mom's hair color. The blonde didn't say a word. How could she even suggest something like that? They had only just started to fall for each other. Wait, he was what? The blonde couldn't believe that he was falling for her. A split second Akame realized what Naruto thought she meant, and her face got as red as his. I didn't mean it like that. She stuttered out. God, she really was socially awkward. Right, of course. The blonde shifted a bit, still blushing. So would you? Akame asked. Naruto didn't know what to do, his brain was just sent into alert, which only happened when something world-ending was happening, or they were out of ramen. And this was neither of those situations. Akame. I am fine on the couch. You don't have to do this. Naruto said, looking away. Akame frowned. Leon's plan had to work for once. So she mustered up the courage, and walked closer to him. Yeah, you're right, I don't have to do this. But I want to do this. She said with a blush. The blush matched perfectly with the rest of her facial features. God, Naruto had to admit she was cute. After a moment of quick hesitation, Naruto quickly swallowed his doubts. Alright. I'll do it. Inside Akame's head, she was literally jumping for joy. She couldn't actually believe Leon's plan had worked. The assassin needed to repay her friend tomorrow for this. Akame began to guide Naruto back to her room. But just as she was about to open her mouth to ask him something, her left hand began to suddenly throb in pain. OWWWW. Akame suddenly shouted, clutching her hand. Akame, you okay? Naruto asked, looking at her with concern. Akame quickly waved it off, and looked back at him. Why, yeah, my left hand just started to hurt suddenly. She clenched her fist a few times. As Akame did this, the pain quickly subsided. The blonde, knowing something was up, decided to investigate. Here, let me take a look. He said, activating Sage Mode, and kneeling down on one knee, while taking her hand. What Naruto saw next shocked him to the core. There was actual natural energy circulating around her left hand. "This is strange," was all the shinobi could say. "What?" Akame asked, tilting her head in the hallway. She looked down at him, and quickly realized the position he was in. Naruto was on one knee in the hallway, holding her hand. This was too much for her. Akame began to blush deep crimson. Naruto, being who he was, didn't notice this, and kept examining her hand. "This is impossible," he muttered out, watching the energy circle around her hand. Akame couldn't see it, but Naruto could. "What?" Akame asked, trying to get her mind off the thought of Naruto holding a ring up to her. Naruto felt around Akame's hand, and looked up at her. "There's natural energy circulating around your hand." Natural energy. Akame tilted her head in confusion. Natural energy? What the hell did that mean to her? "Do you remember when I disconnected from Kurama, during our fight in the Kaiser class? So I could enter Sage mode?" Naruto said, trying to remind the girl. Akame quickly recalled the events of when he fought to Beast. She was all in all still impressed by his actions that day. It was the time she knew she had fallen for the man. "Aha!" Akame finally said. "Well, I did so I could gather natural energy from the land to focus it into my body. This lets me do all of these extraordinary things," he said with a smile, as he got up from the kneeling position. "So this is like your chakra?" the assassin asked, staring at her left hand with awe. Could it be possible she had chakra? "No, the two are completely different. Someone can block my chakra, while you can't block Sage mode. It's difficult to explain," the blonde said, trying to make sense, so she'd understand. Akame, understanding very little of what the blonde meant, just decided to nod her head. "Oh, I think I understand now. But what does it have to do with my left hand?" "That's what I am still trying to figure out. I have an idea." He paused to yawn. "But we can save it for tomorrow." Akame yawned a few seconds after him, and happily agreed. "All right. Follow me then," she said, turning and beginning to walk down the hallway. Naruto walked after Akame through the hideout. He had to admit their base was a decent size. He usually pictured assassin bases to be deep underground. Naruto guessed the Revolutionary Army spared no expanse for Night Raid to feel comfortable and operate successfully. But again, as the thought of the Revolutionary Army appeared in his head, so did Esteth's words. He needed answers. Naruto needed to meet with both sides of the conflict. The Emperor, and the leader of the Revolutionary Army. He needed to go back to the destroyed village. "We're here," Akame suddenly said, stopping in front of her door. Naruto, deep in thought, wasn't paying attention, walked right into her. "Oh!" the blonde yelped out, coming back to reality. She got pushed up against the door with Naruto rubbing against her. Akame's brain was going haywire. Akame knew they had feelings for each other, but he already wanted something like this. She was not prepared at all. "You are Naruto?" she stuttered out, looking back to him. The blonde went wide-eyed, as he connected the dots together. Sorry, he shouted, quickly backing away from her. Naruto was not pervy sage. He didn't do that. It's fine," Akame said, with a deep blush. Before Naruto could say anything else, Akame opened the door. "Well, here we are," she said quickly. Naruto walked in after her, and looked around the room. He wasn't surprised that the room looked quite bland. It was Akame. She had a few knickknacks scattered around the room. But the main thing that stuck out to Naruto was the lone picture frame on the side of Akame's bed. Naruto walked over to it, and picked it up. There in the picture stood two young girls. One could clearly be seen as a young Akame, while the other girl looked closely like her. Except she had solid black eyes instead of red. Like an Uchiha. Naruto then realized. This must be her younger sister. "Is this your sister?" he asked, picking up the picture frame. Akame walked closely behind him, and looked at it with a frown. "Yes. That's Kurome. I can see the resemblance," Naruto said, looking at the picture, and then Akame with a smile. "Did you have any brothers or sisters?" she suddenly asked, wanting to change the subject. Naruto's smile quickly faded. "No, my parents never got the chance to have more, before they died." "They died?" Akame asked, going wide-eyed. She had no idea. "Yeah, on the day I was born," he said, sitting down on the bedside. Akame sat next to him, and looked over. "A man took control of Kurama who was sealed inside my mom, and released him inside the village. Both of my parents sacrificed their lives to protect the village, and save me," he explained to her. "Who were they?" Akame asked, wanting to know more. Naruto, putting his finger on his chin, began to recall the memories of his long-dead parents. Well, my dad was Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki. She was known as the red-hot habanero of the leaf. Such a unique name caught Akame's attention. Red-hot habanero? She asked. Yes. It was because of her red hair. It was so beautiful. Naruto said, remembering when he first saw his mom's beautiful hair. Akame quickly caught on that Naruto liked the color red. You think red's a nice color? She asked. Naruto smiled. Yeah. He paused and stared into her eyes. Why, your eyes look beautiful as well. His blush increased tenfold from this. Akame was taken back. This was the first time someone had said her eyes were beautiful. Usually people would shy away from her red eyes. She blushed deeply. Why, you think so? Akame stuttered out. Sure do. He said, bright smile returning to his face. There was that smile again. The one Akame loved. But she didn't understand him, had been through so much, but still remained happy all the time. How had the world not claimed him, while she had become a monster? Akame, who had been resisting the urge, couldn't hold it in any longer. Without saying a word, she moved closer to Naruto. Akame? The blonde asked, tilting his head at the girl. A moment later Akame began to cry, and hold onto Naruto tightly. Akame? He asked, freaking out. How do you do it, Naruto? She suddenly asked, looking up at him. What do you mean? The blonde asked, confusingly. Did he do something to upset her? Naruto certainly hoped not. You go through all of these hardships and death. But you still manage to come out okay. All the things I've done. Do they make me a monster? Am I no better than the Empire? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Akame, was all the blonde could say as he held her, but suddenly he felt a flood of words about to come out. Never say that again. I mean, look at what you've done. You're practically an angel compared to the Empire. You helped start Night Raid, and you're fighting the good fight against the Empire. Naruto said with a sense of pride and respect in his voice. But how have you done it up to this point? Not fallen to any corruption or temptation? She asked, wanting to know his secrets. I have people I care for, and people watching over me. My precious people. He revealed, looking her straight in the eyes. Huh? Akame asked, going dead quiet. She hadn't expected to get an answer from him. My mom, my dad, my senseis, and all my friends. They are all watching over me. I can't let them down. They cared for me, and loved me. So I must honor their memory, and live to be one of the best people they will ever know. Failure is not an option for me. He said, narrowing his eyes. Akame was taken back a bit. He was so confident in his voice too. But what Naruto said next made Akame's heart skip a beat. And it's not an option for you too. What? She asked, whipping away the tears. You can't fail, Akame. You won't because I won't let you. The blonde said, hugging her tightly. When you think you don't have anyone in this world that cares, look at Night Raid. Look at me. We all care for you, Akame. They watch over you. He whispered to her. What about you? She asked, wanting to know how he felt for her. I want to stand beside you. To take down this horrible empire, with you. I'll be there for you, Akame. Naruto said, putting back on a confident smirk. Better? He asked, looking down at her again. Akame nodded slightly, as he held her in his arms. She had to admit. The assassin liked this feeling of being held by him. It was something she could get used to. Good. Now let's get some sleep, he finally said. Akame wiped away the last of the tears with a smile, as she complied with Naruto. Akame went to lay in her bed, while Naruto sat nervously at the edge. Naruto? She asked, looking up. Are you sure this is fine, Akame? I mean. He said, blushing and looking away. Akame thought he looked so cute doing it. This was one of the rarest moments, where Akame giggled. Yes, Naruto, it's completely fine. I trust you. Naruto slowly nodded, and got into Akame's bed. Within seconds both of them had bright red expression on their faces, as they stared at each other. Naruto stayed at the far end of the bed, as much as possible. Akame on the other hand wasn't. You Naruto? Akame asked, looking over at him with a blush. The Uzumaki who was currently trying to avoid eye contact with her stared right at her for a second. Yes? He asked, then darted his eyes away. Naruto was so embarrassed. You know you could move closer, right? Akame asked, looking at him curiously. She didn't want to blurt it out directly that she wanted to be close to him. I know. I am fine right here. The almost always energetic blonde said with a blush, looking away from her. Akame decided to take initiative this time, and move not even an inch from his body. Akame! He yelped, as he began to fall off the bed from moving so far away. Akame wasn't going to have that. She used all of her strength, and grabbed Naruto, pulling him back up with her on the bed. Akame? Naruto shouted out, looking straight at her, not even an inch away from her face. Akame didn't say a word, and just rested her head under Naruto's chin. The blonde on the other hand was freaking out. He had no idea what to do in this situation. He had to admit he deeply cared for the girl. After such a short time of them being together, he wanted Akame to know it too. So he did the only thing that came to him. The thing that saved so many people in his life, countless times. He spoke from his heart to her. Akame? He asked, this time with a softer tone to his voice. She asked, eyes still closed, as she held onto him in her bed. The Uzumaki moved down towards her, and gently kissed her forehead. Akame opened her eyes instantly, and looked up at the Uzumaki. He looked down at her with a sincere smile. You're one of my precious people. When Naruto said that, the ever-strange feeling in her heart went haywire. Someone I care for. Deeply. He added. She was so happy. Akame buried her head in Naruto's chest. In turn, the Uzumaki held her close. Akame felt the warmth coming from his body, as Naruto held her close. The warmth she always felt, when she was close to him. Both of them didn't need to say anything else. They both understood how they felt. Naruto continued to hold a smiling Akame. These were the arms she truly felt safe in, from the cruel and harsh world that always seemed to be around her. Naruto, the ever-smiling boy, that dropped into Akame's life one day, has already begun to save her from her terrible past. Akame smiled one last time, before drifting off to sleep. You're telling me there is some strange lunatic going around, and chopping off people's heads? Tatsumi shouted out in the middle of the meeting room. All the other members were standing in a circle around him, with Najenda in her chair. She held Yukari in her arms. Doya and Seo stood together off to the side while the older members of Night Raid stood closer to Najenda. Kurama was being held by Shield. It could clearly be seen that he was enjoying himself. While Naruto and Akame stood close to each other, at the far end of the group. Both of them had pleasant smile on their faces. This was something that Leone quickly picked up on. She was going to have to get all the details from Akame later. Najenda waited a moment for Tatsumi to finish his outburst, but before she could resume speaking, Mind spoke for her. They called him Headhunter Zanku. He was originally an executioner for one of the Empire's biggest prisons, but went insane from the sheer amount of executions he did daily. The pink-haired assassin explained. Once more we have received intel that he is in possession of an imperial arm. Najenda added, crossing her arms. Tatsumi's expression instantly turned into a scowl. What a horrible guy. We need to find him, and beat his ass, he shouted up into the air. Bullet and Leone laughed at this, while Mine simply shook her head. Now hold your horses, Tatsumi. No need to go rushing ahead. Besides, if you ran into this man without your partner, you'd be in a lot of trouble, Bullet said, holding Tatsumi's chin, and staring down at him. The young man tried to back away while Leone and Lubbock were dying on the floor, from laughter. I feel like I am in another kind of trouble at the moment, Tatsumi said. Do we have any idea what kind of Tigu he possesses? Shield asked, as Kurama snuggled into her arms. Naruto gave him an annoyed scowl. No idea. Leone informed her. This wasn't good for Night Raid. Going into a fight with poor information about the enemy's offensive capabilities didn't exactly play out well. Naruto just smirked, walking into the middle of the group past Tatsumi. It doesn't matter. A man like that, he'll do what Tatsumi already said. He'll beat the crap out of him, Naruto shouted, smacking both of his fists together. Akame slightly smiled at this. The same could be said for Doya, Seo, and Tatsumi. Oh? Najenda asked, perking up at his declaration. The older members of Night were also intrigued, so they let Naruto continue. Back in my world, Shinobi would have made quick work of him. So it's my job to do the same here. No matter a Tigu or not, he exclaimed, flaring his chakra a bit at this. A blue wave of energy flew in every direction from his body. Some of the members were slightly shocked by this. Kurama smiled, and looked at Najenda. Ha, you got the boy fired up. Hey. Sounds like you need to blow off some steam, Naruto, Leone suggested. Najenda smiled at this. Well, you won't be leaving for a few hours. I would like to see Naruto's full capabilities, so I can send back a report to the Revolutionary Army leaders, Najenda explained. Naruto froze for a moment, as he remembered Estet's words again. Having the Revolutionary Army, a completely unknown faction, know about all of his abilities was very idiotic. He had been to blind earlier, and trusted Esteth with certain information, a mistake he would not make again. Everyone stared at the blonde for a moment, waiting for him to speak. Well, he began, but was immediately cut off by a loud crash from the hallway outside. All of Night Raid turned to the source of the noise too. The blonde of course instantly picked up that it was one of his clones, but he didn't know what was happening. No, wait just a minute. The clone shouted from the other side of the door. Another loud crash soon followed. Get the hell back here. A feminine voice shouted out, as they neared the door. Everyone in Night Raid, including Naruto, tilted their head curiously. A split second later one of Naruto's clones went flying through the door. He yelled, flying through the air, and landing on top of Leone. Boss, help. The other clone shouted, running through the doorway. The original blonde asked. These were the clones that he made last night to watch over the little girls, which that could only mean. Out of my way. The little girl with golden blonde hair shouted, sprinting through the doorway after the clones. She rammed into the clone standing in front of Naruto with full force. Wah! The clone shouted, as he stumbled right into Naruto, which caused him to trip backwards. The clone quickly dispelled, as Naruto's eyes widened. Oh no, was all the original could say, as he fell back gripping onto a nearby Tatsumi, and moving towards an open window. Not controlling themselves. Shit! Tatsumi shouted out, as they stumbled. Crap! Naruto yelped, knowing nothing could have prepared him for this moment. And just like that both flew out of the window, holding onto each other as they fell. Naruto, Akame, and Doya shouted, rushing to the window. Tatsumi, Sayo, and Mine yelled following them. Sayo gave Mine a strange look. The pink-haired girl didn't pay much attention to her. A loud crash soon followed, and everyone remained dead silent. All the girls at the window held their breaths, while Leone was crushing the clone Naruto in her breasts. Kurama and Lubbock were laughing their ass off, while Shield was looking around curiously. Najenda and Bullet were just shaking their heads, while Yukari was giggling. As for the now 3 little girls that had entered the room, they all froze in place seeing all the people. A few seconds later a rustling noise was heard below the window. We're okay. Tatsumi shouted out. All the girls looked down to see a thumb up in the bushes from below. They all sighed in relief. Those idiots. Mine said, turning away from the window, and walking back to group, only to see Leone still snuggling Naruto's clone. Leone, you're crushing me. The clone said, gasping for breath, as she pushed him further into her chest. Leone simply smirked, and whispered into the clone's ear. Hee hee. Don't be silly, I'd never do that to you. See, can't breath. The clone said one last time, before he poofed away. Out of existence. This caused Leone to start laughing, as the remaining girls by the window all walked back over. Everyone in the room waited patiently for the boys to return. After a few minutes Naruto and Tatsumi made their way back up to the meeting room. Goddammit Tatsumi, you're so heavy, Naruto shouted out, as they burst through the doors. Hey. It's not my fault. Tatsumi quickly retaliated back. The rest of Night Raid just watched the two bicker, as they walked back to them. The blonde smirked at this. Maybe if you cut down on all the late-night snacks, he shouted out. Najenda's ears perked up at this, as Tatsumi's eyes widened in horror, as he grabbed Naruto's collar. I told you not to tell anyone about that. He shook Naruto back and forth as he laughed. Najenda knew that it had gone on long enough, so she looked over at the two. Ahem. Her voice made the two stop and look over at her, as well as the rest of the team. Kurama and Lubbock were still laughing their ass off. Oh. Right. Sorry boss. Tatsumi apologized for the both them. Najenda waved it off. It doesn't matter. Now Naruto. Would you like to introduce me to these girls? She asked, pointing to the 3 little girls still standing cautiously in the middle of everyone. But suddenly the girl with the golden blonde hair and orange raincoat ran straight up to Najenda. I am Fal. I'll beat the crap out of you if you try and hurt my friends, she snickered. Najenda chuckled at this, as the girl with the long pink hair and the matching pink raincoat walked up behind the blonde one. Fal, please don't be rude. That was the man who saved us yesterday. The pink-haired girl said, walking up to Naruto. You were the one who saved us, right? Naruto blinked for a moment. Yeah. That was me. Naruto Uzumaki, he said with a bright smile. The little girl smiled, from seeing his smile. A smile that was untainted by this world. She used to have this smile, until yesterday. Pleased to meet you. She smiled and hugged Naruto. Much to everyone's shock. Thank you for saving us. She looked at him, staring contently into his eyes. Until a small blush appeared across her face. Naruto awkwardly rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah. Don't mention it. Just doing what's right. That seems noble. Not many people would do that in this world for us. The girl with the hood over her blue hair said, standing behind the other two. Huh? Naruto asked, looking back to her. The girl's head hung low. You could tell she wasn't in the best of moods. That's Luna. Fal said, pointing back to her. As soon as she heard her name was called, Luna perked up. The bunny ears on her hood bounced a bit. She quickly walked forward and stood in front of Naruto. Thank you for saving me. Just the thought of what they would have done to us if you wouldn't have shown up, Luna said, as she also hugged Naruto. Akame was getting quite antsy from all the hugs Naruto was receiving. After Luna finished hugging the blonde, Naruto smiled happily at all three of them. I do have a question. Who are you? Air asked, putting a finger over her mouth, as she thought. Lubbock smirked, and out of nowhere pulled out a giant Night Raid flag, holding it over his shoulders. We're Night Raid, he shouted out, and was immediately punched in the head by Leone. The girls stood in awe for a moment. So this was the mysterious organization that they all have heard about. Fal immediately ran up to Lubbock and shouted out with glee, and Night Raid. Luna immediately walked up and pulled her back. Fal, she said with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. Fal broke free of Luna's grasp and ran back forward. You're actually the famous group that battles the capital with the Revolutionary Army? Naruto smirked at this. Yep. That's right. Fal's eyes lit up even more. Wow. So cool. You have to let me join, she shouted, literally jumping off the walls. Fal. Luna said again, walking forward. Luna had always been the more realistic one of their little group. She thought things through the entire way first. Najenda put her hand up. No, it's quite all right. We actually wanted to talk with all of you about that. I have an offer for you. Some of the Night Raid members' eyes widened, but Tatsumi was the one to speak out against this. What? He yelled out, stepping forward. Tatsumi? Sayo asked, looking towards him. You can't be serious. They're just kids, the young man argued. Tatsumi, calm down, Sayo said, walking up to him and grabbing his shoulder. No, he shouted out, turning to Naruto. Come on, you have to back me up here. We should NT to this. Naruto was all for it actually. Well, I kinda learned how to fight at an early age. Every shinobi in my village did. Are we seriously going to use kids to attack the Empire now? Tatsumi yelled out, looking at everyone around the room. World isn't pretty, Bullet said, looking out a window. Bro? Tatsumi asked. But he didn't get a response. Bullet just stared out the window. Leone walked up to him and laughed slightly. I bet these girls know the full dangers of the capital and the Empire. You're damn right. I want some payback. I'll join Night Raid, Fal shouted out, running forward to the both of them. Fal. Think about this. We barely know how to fight, Luna said, trying to stir her friend away from this. We'd only be sending you on minor missions and messenger runs. I assume you have nowhere else to go? Najenda asked. Luna and Fal looked down, with a hint of sadness. Surprisingly, Air walked forward. We can't go back to our village, they'd get in big trouble with the Empire, and plus we weren't really wanted there. And to top it off, you have two of the best people in this world to train you. Lubbock suddenly butted in, trying to convince the girls. He immediately got a dirty look from Leone. Huh? All of the girls asked. Your teachers would be Akame and Naruto, Najenda revealed. This time all of Night Raid's eyes widened, except for Leone, Naruto, and Akame, who already knew about this. Their two most powerful members were going to train this little kids. What was Najenda thinking? Najenda coughed for a second, and pointed to Akame. Akame here is an excellent sword user. She's also cunning and stealthy, which are some of the best traits for an assassin. She knows much more as well, Najenda explained. Leone then walked over to Naruto, and put him in a headlock. And Naruto over here is the knucklehead of the group, she shouted out, much to his protest. Hey Leone. Naruto blushed. Akame's eyebrow twitched slightly. Naruto is one of the best people I've seen in my life. He's extremely powerful and kind, Najenda explained as well. Leone smiled. Hey, he's already taken on General Esdeath. Wow. No way. Fal shouted out. Everyone who lived in the lands of the Empire knew of the heartless Ice Queen Esdeath. She was known to be unbeatable, until now. He won too. Akame said quietly. Foul eyes lit up with hearts as she stared at Naruto. She just adored being strong, and training with this Naruto person would certainly put her on that path. I am in, she exclaimed. Luna on the other hand had grown tired of Foul's outburst, and immediately protested. Foul. Wait a moment. What? Foul asked, turning around. Do you realize what will happen to us, if we agree to this? We'll become assassins, like all these people. We need to think about this. Luna said, walking up to her, with a serious expression. Najenda smirked. She knew these little girls were no idiots, they would make good team members. I assure you. This is no game. You will have to kill people, Shiel said, petting a sleepy Kurama. Foul frowned, as she looked down, hair covering her eyes. I know that, she said, clutching her fist. She knew all of this already. She would have to kill and murder people, but she didn't care. Foul wanted to stop everything bad in the capital. She started to cry, thinking of the memories of last night, but suddenly she felt a pair of arms go around her. Huh? She asked, looking up. Naruto was hugging. Hey, it'll be all right, he smiled brightly. We'll be there with you every step of the way. Naruto smiled again. Foul was immediately filled with reassurance. She wiped the tears from her eyes, as Naruto let go. What do you think, Air? She asked, looking back to the leader of their little group. Luna also looked back. We should join. The pink-haired girl said, almost immediately. What? Both of the other girls said in unison. We'd be doing more help here, than out in the countryside somewhere, and besides we'd be training under these two amazing people. Just think, with their training the events of yesterday would never have to be repeated. Air explained. Foul agreed with her, but Luna looked down with doubt. But still, murdering people, we're only 13, she protested. Air put her hand on Luna's shoulder. Please Luna. Just think. We could make it that there would be no more slave trade here. Luna looked down again, thinking it over for a moment. Everyone waited in anticipation for her answer. Finally she put her head back up. Fine Air, I'll do it. Najenda smirked, and Naruto smiled brightly. Then it's settled, Naruto said. Najenda began to stand up, and Yukari hopped off her lap. Starting today. Air, Foul, and Luna welcome to Night Raid, the leader exclaimed. Everyone in the room clapped, as Foul and Air smiled happily. Luna still looked unsure, but still put a smile on her face. Najenda walked up to them. You'll be following Akame and Naruto around for the majority of your training. Please Shiel, show them to some of our extra rooms. I'll have everyone introduce themselves later, she explained, with a rare smile. You got it. Air said, as Shiel quickly gathered the three, and moved out of the room. Kurama was now asleep in Shiel's arms, as they moved. Naruto and Akame both knew they were in for quite a ride. Now then. Naruto. Najenda said, turning everyone's attention back to the blonde. Yeah? He asked, even though knowing full well what she wanted. Back to our earlier conversation. I would like to see your full capabilities. The leader of Night Raid asked, crossing her arms, and staring at the blonde. You really think that's safe, Najenda? I can level an entire continent if I saw fit, Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. But this caused some of the other members of Night Raid to shudder. How could someone be so powerful? I know, but still I would like to see, Najenda said with a smirk, sitting back in her chair. Naruto thought for a moment. This would be the perfect time to ask her for an opportunity to meet with certain individuals. Then I need something from you in return, Naruto said, causing Najenda to raise one of her eyebrows. Oh? What's that? She asked. A meeting with the people who are in charge of the Revolutionary Army. Naruto revealed. Everyone's eyes widened at this. Why would you want that? Najenda asked, getting slightly worried. Naruto knew this next question was about to make Night Raid question his loyalty. I need to meet with the person in charge so I know I am fighting for what's right, he said. This immediately caused everyone to stare daggers into him. What? Mine asked, turning towards him with a confused and angry expression. Are you saying you don't think the Revolutionary Army is doing good? Lubbock asked, walking towards him, killing intent rising. Naruto. Akame said, staring at him. How could he possibly even think like that? Bullet chuckled at this, and so did Najenda. Leonie didn't pay much attention, as she looked out the window, while everyone else remained quiet. I am sorry, it's just Esdeath told me something that I can't get out of my head, the blonde explained to them. She's playing mind games with you, Naruto, Lubbock protested, gripping his collar. Would you really trust that bitch over us? Mine asked, walking up to him clearly pissed off. Najenda quickly put her hand up to silence everyone. Now hold on everyone. I can understand Naruto's caution. He isn't from this world, remember. He doesn't know the history all too well. Naruto was also rushed into night raid. But boss, Lubbock protested, as he let go of Naruto's collar. But nothing. Naruto has a right to answers. So I'll get you that meeting Naruto. After the current target is eliminated. Najenda said, she wanted the blonde to be with them 100% no doubts, or anything of the sorts. Naruto smiled, slightly. Thank you Najenda. The leader of night raids smirked. I still expect to see your full capabilities, but in time. I won't push it. But we'll also talk about this meeting with the Prime Minister when you return, and the dangers it might hold. Naruto nodded at this, and moved to the back of the group, avoiding everyone. Najenda stood up, and everyone immediately stood at attention to her. Now everyone. You leave tonight for the capital to find the serial killer. Dismissed. Roger. They all shouted out, as Naruto slipped out of the room quickly to avoid any awkward stares. A couple hours had passed since the meeting, and Naruto was sitting alone on the training grounds. He had been careful to avoid everyone since the meeting. He kinda felt ashamed for making Night Raid question him. Damn it, I should have asked that. Now they're going to lose faith in me, and Akame. She must hate me now, he said, sighing. Naruto sighed. I need to do something to get my mind off of this. Naruto said, looking around. Well, I am at a training field. Little did the blonde know that Akame was watching him from behind one of the buildings, nervously. Does he hate me now? He's been avoiding me all day, she asked herself. I am sure he doesn't hate you, Leonie said, standing behind the stealthy assassin. Akame looked behind her. You're probably right, eh? Leonie, she stammered out, completely confused. Leonie immediately put her hand over Akame's mouth. Shush, quiet. You don't want to alert him, Leonie said, pointing to the blonde. Why, yeah. Akame stuttered out, staring at Naruto. He was too busy on the field, training with some shadow clones. Naruto flawlessly defended himself against all his shadow clones. Akame still had a worried expression on her face. Leonie picked up on this, and looked at her best friend with concern. Are you still worried about earlier? A little bit. Akame said, still staring at the blonde. I hope he doesn't hate me. Leonie chuckled at this. It was so cute to see Akame act like this towards a person. It was also odd too. She was usually cold to anyone when she first meets them, but not Naruto. She warmed right up to him. But the blonde also wasn't like everyone in this world. Leonie had to admit. Naruto gave her hope that one day, her home can truly be at peace. Akame, jittering, quickly brought Leonie back to reality. He doesn't hate you, Akame. Honestly, I think he thinks you hate him right now, the blonde explained to her. What? She didn't even think about that. God, she felt stupid now. Yeah, he thinks you don't trust him now, that he questioned our cause. But he has every right to do it. Leonie continued to explain. Akame's eyes just widened. You should try to show him that you don't hate him, during the mission tonight, Leonie added, with a devilish smirk. The black-haired assassin simply blushed at this. Leonie leaned up against the building, and got back on track with the topic at hand. But to be honest, Naruto aroused my suspicions in our own army as well. Akame's eyes widened. This shocked her. You mean you have doubts too? Leonie nodded. For a while I have. What do you mean? She asked, wanting to know more. If two trustworthy people in her life had doubts about the Revolutionary Army, then that meant something was up. Leonie chuckled. Just think about it. We don't exactly know who's running the show up top. It could be a person that's just as bad as the Prime Minister. Akame didn't realize this, until now. She was so blinded by the noble cause of the Revolutionary Army. She didn't stop to realize what it might actually be. Something worse than the Empire. I've had my suspicions. Naruto's just the only one with the balls to question the true purpose of the rebels, Leonie added. Akame didn't say another word. She simply turned back to watch Naruto train, while all these thoughts racked her brain. Naruto, she said in a soft tone, worrying about the Uzumaki. One thing was certain though, she would make sure he knew she didn't hate him now. On the contrary, she actually grew to like him a lot more now from this. The blonde still stood on the training field wiping some sweat off his face. He may basically be a god, but he can still work up a sweat from moving around so much. Alright. Let's go for a high-powered Justu, he shouted out. His clone on the other side of the field gave him a thumbs up. You got it. Naruto began to form a tailed beast ball in his hands, but as it grew bigger, and bigger Naruto began to suddenly condense the just two down. His clone began to do the exact same thing. Without a second thought, Naruto sprinted towards his clone, and his copy did the same. Akame watched in awe as Naruto demonstrated some of his raw power again. He really was the strongest. Few hours later, Naruto walked through the streets of the capital in the dark of night. He opted to go by himself, away from the other groups. He still didn't want to be near them. Not right now at least. A split second later, a group of Imperial Guardsmen ran past him, almost completely ignoring him, besides for a few stares. Maybe Esdeath gave word to the guard to avoid him at all costs. But oh well. It didn't matter to him. He had a mission to complete, and a target to eliminate. What the blonde didn't know was the very target he was looking for was watching him. A matter of fact, he was watching all of Night Raid from a tall tower in the distance. Hey. It's time for fun. Who should I go after first? Zanku asked himself, staring at all of them. He looked from each member of Night Raid. First was Akame and Leone, then Shiel and Mine, Bullet and Lubbock, and finally the largest group was Doya, Seo, and Tatsumi. But Zanku ignored all of these people, until his eyes landed straight on Naruto. Oh, a Lone Ranger, I see. He smirked, showing his pure white teeth. I'll get you first, little one. He smirked, jumping off the tower towards the Uzumaki. Man, this is boring. Naruto shouted out, sitting down on a park bench. He sat on the very edge of a park. He peered off into the very poorly lit park. Who knows what could happen in there? But suddenly Naruto heard the sound of footsteps approaching him. He only slightly tensed up. He didn't want his target to think that he was waiting for him. A moment later, a young woman with auburn hair and amber eyes ran towards him, with a bright smile. The woman had her hair up in her long ponytail, that almost reached the ground. She wore an Imperial Guard uniform and she was carrying a strange dog-like creature. Excuse me? The woman asked, jogging up to him. Yeah? Naruto responded, looking at her. She put one of her hands on her hip, and began to speak. You shouldn't be out here this late. There is a curfew in the area, and a serial killer on the loose. Naruto just leaned back on the park bench. I think I'll be just fine out here by myself, lady. The woman's smile faded for a moment, but then returned. Well then, you must be very brave then. Hey. Something like that. Naruto said with a chuckle. He even knew he had to be quiet here. The blonde didn't want this lady knowing he was part of Night Raid. He had to keep his responses simple. Trying to help us track him down? She asked, tilting her head. The dog did the same too, as it stared at him. It freaked out Naruto. You could say that. Naruto said with an awkward smile. That dog just kept staring. With those blank eyes. That is the ultimate sense of justice, she suddenly shouted out. Naruto instantly began to freak out. Why in the hell was she being so loud? The killer could be around them, at this very moment. Suddenly she stopped shouting, and saluted to him. I am Seryu, by the way. Imperial Guard, she said with a smile. This girl freaked him out, more than he freaked himself out. But he knew he had to be polite to her. I am Naruto. The woman's facial expression lit up at this. It's nice to meet you, she said with another bright smile. It was hard for the blonde to focus on her, with that dog staring. He had to ask the question. Who's that? Naruto pointed down to the dog. Oh, him. This is Koro. He's my partner. Seryu explained, still with a smile on her face. Partner? Naruto asked, with a raised eyebrow. That little chubby thing didn't look that powerful. It was more like a bouncy ball. Yep. She said, holding Koro close, causing it to look up at her and smile. But then the dog made a noise for a second, and then turned back to Naruto. He made a low growl. Naruto gulped. Could that thing tell he was Night Raid? Oh, is something wrong, Koro? Seryu asked, with a worried expression. Koro made another noise, and Seryu began to giggle. No, it can't be. This man can't be an enemy. He's the spitting image of justice, she shouted out, hugging the dog. Seryu looked like she was about to pop Koro. Naruto just smiled awkwardly. The little dog freaked him out still, a lot. But as Seryu kept talking, Naruto got the strange feeling that someone was watching him. He quickly turned his head, and saw Akame poking her head out from corner of a building. Naruto waved to her, but she quickly darted her head back in, when she saw he had noticed her. This made him chuckle, and stand up. Well, Seryu, it was nice talking with you, but I gotta go now. Seryu perked up at this. Oh? Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, probably time I head inside for the night, he said, beginning to walk off. Seryu smiled again. Alright, Well, take care. Be on the lookout for that killer, and if you find him, come get me, she said, waving to him. Naruto stopped, and turned back with a bright smile. Hey. Don't worry, I will. You can count on me. This caused Saryu to blush, as she watched him. The spitting image of justice. Just like Dad, and the captain. She said to herself, watching Naruto walk off, blush still on her face. Naruto waved to her one last time before running towards the direction Akame went. Even though there was a murderer on the loose, there was a little time for fun and games. Damn, she's fast. Let's see, where did she go? He asked himself, walking through the empty streets of the capital. Finally, after some time searching, he finally ran into her. He tracked her all the way to some ruined area or square of some sorts. She kept running towards the center. Hey Akame! Wait up, he shouted out to her. Almost as if on command, she stopped, and turned with a smile. Hey! You're running a bit fast there, aren't you? He asked her with a smirk. She just smiled, and hugged him. Eh? Akame, this is sudden. He freaked out, as she held him close. But something felt off to Naruto. Why wasn't she talking, and she usually got really embarrassed by these things. A smirk appeared across her face. Ashura, move. A voice suddenly shouted out in his head. A feminine voice. Not Kurama's. Huh? Naruto asked, until his eyes widened, and he realized. This wasn't Akame. Well, hello there. Zanku shouted out, extending his two blades from the gauntlets on his hand. He moved one for Naruto's head, and the blonde barely stopped it with a kunai. But with the other blade, Naruto wasn't so lucky. Zanku's hand was moving too fast, and he didn't have enough time. A moment later, his blade sliced into Naruto's chest, and Zanku buried it inside him. See, crap, he stammered out, as Zanku kicked him away. Well, hello, my young friend. How is your day going? Zanku snickered, approaching Naruto with his blades extended, one dripping the blonde's blood. Naruto gripped his stomach. The wound was nothing, but he would be slowed for a couple seconds, until it was fully healed. He needed to buy time. Fine, before I met you, asshole. Naruto said with a smirk. The wound was already healing. Zanku's evil smile returned, and he ran towards the Hokage. Oh, I am going to enjoy killing you, he shouted out, with an insane laugh. Naruto smirked again. His wound fully closed, and he disappeared for a moment. Zanku stopped, and looked around. Not likely. Asshole. Naruto whispered, as he launched a kick to the man, from behind. But with surprising speed, Zanku turned and blocked the kick. But from Naruto's brute strength, he shattered one of Zanku's blades. Oh? Still have some fight left in you? The killer stammered out. Naruto didn't say a word, and sprinted towards him, and took out his chakra knuckle blades. Again, just before he reached him, he suddenly disappeared. But this time Zanku was prepared, and he instantly blocked the incoming slice from Naruto on his right. He pushed the blonde away, and snickered even more. How? Naruto asked. With his incredible speed, no one could usually block his kicks. Zanku smiled. All in due time, friend. Let's get acquainted first. I am Headhunter Zanku. Pleased to meet you, he said, throwing off his overcoat. Naruto's expression didn't change. He had already guessed who he was. So you're the insane serial killer running around? The Uzumaki smirked. Why, yes, that's me. Hey, and you are? Zanku asked. Naruto stuck his right arm out, and pointed at Zanku. Naruto Uzumaki, you piece of trash, and you'll be dying right here, he screamed, rushing him, with his chakra blades. Naruto managed to clash blades with Zanku, but every time he got close to hitting him, he always dodged it. Haha. You won't be able to land a scratch on me for a while, attacking like that. Zanku shouted. Then I am glad I have all night, Naruto said, using his strength to push harder. Zanku struggled, and was pushed back by Naruto's strength. He began to huff to puff. The kid really was strong, but he couldn't show his loss of confidence. I am surprised someone like you joined Night Raid. You don't really seem like the assassin type. Trying to change the world. Hey. The Revolutionary Army isn't really the place to start, they're just as corrupt as the Empire. He pushed the Uzumaki away. Hard to believe you're the one who beat Esdeath. Zanku charged the Uzumaki again. Naruto blocked it again, and struck blades against him. I'll just have to change the Empire and the Revolutionary Army. I'll save this world from both of them if they want listen, he screamed, punching Zanku. He blocked it with his blade, but in turn it shattered. He was defenseless now. He just scowled at Naruto. He was sick and tired of his little speeches, and Night Raid. They're just an unstable path of fire. That will be extinguished once the revolutionary army is done with them. Naruto rushed him, throwing his blade aside. Then it'll just have to be the fire from Night Raid that walks a different path. You piece of trash, he shouted, rearing back his fist. Damn it. Zanku said, aloud as he took out a hidden blade. He slashed it at the incoming Naruto. I didn't give up on my world. So I am not going to give up on this one, the blonde screamed out, still approaching. Such ideological talk. Zanku frowned. He hated these kinds of people. He took out his second knife and slashed both of them at the blonde. Naruto narrowly dodged it and disappeared again. What? Zanku asked. I'll change this world and fix it. So cut the crap with how I can't save it, because I will. The Uzumaki screamed, reappearing behind the killer. Zanku put up his guard with his knives. Naruto instantly got through his guard and punched Zanku in the chest. Crap, he's fast. Zanku thought to himself. The killer kneeled down and spat up some blonde. He was incredibly powerful too. He needed to buy time and waited out for an opening. Zanku knew the perfect idea. I'll tell you a little secret, boy. It's my Tigu here. Naruto wasn't going to fall for that. He punched through Zanku's guard and created a clone that grabbed him from behind. I don't give a shit about that useless crap, the Uzumaki yelled. EHH? Zanku freaked out. There were two of them? The clone firmly held Zanku, while a ball of orange chakra formed in Naruto's hand. Now die. You piece of trash, he shouted out, forcing the Rasengan into his chest. It slowly began to grind against his stomach. The blonde smirked, but what he didn't see was that Zanku was smirking too. What are you smiling about? Naruto asked. Zanku's Tigu began to glow bright green. Zanku kept smirking, and time almost felt like it stopped for Naruto. The sky turned red, and he looked around. What the hell? He asked himself. He looked at his Rasengan, and realized the target was much smaller than before. The hell? He thought to himself. No, wait please. Naruto-kun. A feminine voice now screamed out, as the Rasengan kept grinding. The Uzumaki froze at this, and looked at his target. She had long dark blue hair, that reached her back. Her eyes were almost pure white, with a hint of lavender. What? The blonde asked, going wide-eyed, and causing the Rasengan to disappear. Naruto-kun, don't do this, the girl coughed out, as blood trickled out of the side of her mouth. The blonde was still frozen. This was impossible. The very girl in front of him was supposed to be dead. Hinata? He stammered out. In turn the girl weakly smiled back. Naruto shook his head. Why, you're dead. No, this is a trick. He began to form another Rasengan in his hand. But before he could complete it, the girl sprinted up to him and hugged him tightly. Please don't. Not again, she cried. Naruto was about to drop the Rasengan, but the sudden roar of Kurama shook him. Kid, snap out of it. Don't fall for it again, he roared. Don't die yet. I just found Shield. Zanku was smiling the entire time. Naruto was stuck in his trap. He had moved a good distance away from Naruto. Another hidden ability. It can play pretty convincing tricks on the mind. Zanku smirked. You may be powerful, kid, but you're not invincible. Hard to believe that you were the one to beat S-Death. He sighed, and walked towards the frozen Naruto with his blade extended. Naruto was still doubtful. But then, as if Kami himself smacked Naruto for extra reinforcement, another voice shouted in his head. Ashura. The feminine voice from earlier shouted out in his head. Suddenly the image of Hinata disappeared, and Zanku returned, running straight for the blonde. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So it wasn't real. One of his friends really wasn't alive. The psychotic killer was just playing him. His jaw clenched, and he took off towards Zanku with such speed that the ground cracked under him. Naruto didn't even notice the rest of Night Raid approaching him now from behind. Zanku's smirk fell, as he saw the blonde approaching at high speed. What? He screamed out, his expression turning to terror, trying to turn around. Naruto held his fist out, and opened his palm as it glowed with Kurama's chakra, and a flaming Rasengan formed. Wow. What's Naruto's doing? Lubbock asked, running alongside the rest of the group. It isn't exactly stealthy. Mine said, huffing along with her pumpkin, as they all came to a stop. Are you sure we're safe here? Sayo asked, sticking close to Tatsumi. All of Night Raid stood and watched the Uzumaki. Akame stood directly at the front. Go straight to hell, you psychotic freak. I'll change this world. The blonde screamed out. His eyes burned with hatred towards the man. Zanku's eyes just widened. He couldn't do anything. But suddenly he smiled, and thought to himself. So this was the boy who beat Esdeath. Maybe there's hope after all. Huh. The voices they finally stopped. His vision blurred, and everything became white. The air crackled around Naruto as he reached Zanku. This is for Hinata. You have no right looking in my memories, he yelled out at the top of his lungs. When he impacted, everything went quiet, and then a spark appeared between Zanku and Naruto. Second later, the entire area was bathed in fire. Almost all of the Night Raid members were blown over from the explosion. Except Akame and Bullet. Bullet because of his armor, and Akame because she dug Murasama into the ground. The two watched the attack. As the explosion began to die down, a bright orange object flew from the explosion. It was the blonde Rasengan, and whatever remained of Zanku. Everyone watched, with opened mouths and shocked expression. The Rasengan flew upwards into the sky, high above the Imperial City. A few moments later it exploded in a gigantic ball of flames above everything. The shockwaves soon followed and woke everyone who already wasn't awake. Night Raid just stood there. Half terrified, half shocked. Naruto keeps proving how strong he is over and over again. Holy. Leone began. Shit. Doya finished. So much power. Bullet said out loud, as he deactivated Incursio. Tatsumi and Mine agreed with him. Akame was still watching the fading explosion. She was still so amazed by it. Naruto was certainly the savior for this world. As the dust and smoke settled around the courtyard, all of Night Raid turned to the middle where a small crater now laid. Naruto walked out a moment later, still partially smoking from the attack. He quickly walked over to the rest of Night Raid, who were still trying to get up. Akame struggled to get up from her crouched position, until Naruto offered her a hand with a bright smile. She took it and stood beside him. Without thinking, Akame held his hand tightly. They both could feel the mass of natural energy flowing through them both. Naruto, that was incredibly. Tatsumi shouted, running up to him, with a cheery smile. Lubbock did the same. Totally awesome, man. He smirked at them, and looked back in the sky. Akame did the same. Whatever tortured you is over, Zanku. I'll make sure men like you aren't created in this world. I'll save this world. It's official under the protection of Naruto Uzumaki now. He shouted out, with valor, clenching his fist into the sky. This way. A voice shouted in the distance, followed by dozens of footsteps. It was the Imperial Guard. Move, move. Another voice shouted as the footsteps got closer. Leone looked at everyone. We need to go. They all nodded their head. Right. And quickly began to sprint off into the night. Leone smiled at the fact that Naruto and Akame were holding hands. The hell was that? The Prime Minister asked, as he stood on the balcony of the palace, watching the massive explosion in the distance. That was Naruto. Esdeath said, with a small chuckle, watching the attack fade. She was amazed by it. How one man could unleash so much destruction, she'd never know. What? Honest asked. Standard there in his pajamas, he got incredibly nervous. Yes. I am guessing. Probably only a simple attack. Esdeath nodded. Impossible. He said, looking back out. Footsteps were heard a second later, and Budo along with the Imperial Guard ran to them on the balcony. Prime Minister, are you all right? Budo asked. Yes, Budo. Honest sighed. He found the Imperial Guard to be quite annoying at some points. Budo gave him a slight nod, and walked up to them. So you're saying that was this Naruto? He asked. Correct. Esdeath smiled. Budo's nose wrinkled, and he turned to one of the guards. Deploy the guard to the area of the source of that attack. Yes, sir. The guard saluted, and ran off. So he really is strong. But no matter, he will fall to the Empire's might. Budo announced, crossing his arms. Esdeath still smiled, standing in the middle between the two. See why I want him on our side? She asked the minister. Honest had to agree with her. Yes. Hopefully this meeting will pay off. But he still had no intention on letting this boy live. There was one way to take out someone this powerful. He smirked. Soon the fun will begin. Naruto sat on the branch of a tree on the outskirts of the destroyed village. He looked around, taking in his surroundings. A couple months ago he was here, and had no idea what he was getting into. He was naive, and still was. But now he had a better grasp on the situation. The blonde had certainly changed now. Had become more mature and realistic. But he hadn't let the evil of this world taint him. Like it had so many others. I am sure they're here. Akame said, kneeling by him on the tree branch. Leone sat on a branch below them, scanning the area. Najenda had just sent these two with Naruto. I can smell them. Leone said, smacking her fists together. She had her Tigu activated, which enhanced all her senses. Are you sure you want to go alone, Naruto-kun? Akame asked the blonde. She had gotten into the habit of adding the kun suffix to his name ever since he fought Zanku. Naruto didn't mind it at all, he liked the feeling. The blonde looked back and smirked at her. Yeah. It has to be me. No one else. But this is our perfect chance to kill the Prime Minister. Leonie quickly protested. It was clear that she was correct. Naruto was here, their most powerful assassin. Night Raid could take down Honest right now, and shorten the civil war. But Naruto had his doubts. So did Najenda. The Prime Minister wouldn't just show himself to Naruto without a plan. So Naruto was instructed to go down and meet with the man by himself, although Leonie was still doubtful. I doubt the Prime Minister would show himself like this, Akame said. Leonie looked over at her friend and frowned, but she knew Akame was right. Naruto looked towards the town, then back towards the girls. All right then. Well, I am off. Be on guard. Will do. Leonie said with a smirk. Akame simply nodded her head. The blonde jumped down from the tree and entered the destroyed village. It was a ghost town now. No one had even come back to salvage the place. Naruto continued to walk the streets until he remembered something. The Uzumaki put his finger up to his forehead. Yo Kurama, you there? Right here. The fox replied a few seconds later, with a slight groan. The blonde was sure that he pulled him away from his new friend. Naruto laughed and put his hands behind his back. How's your time with Shield coming along? It almost seemed like the fox got a bit excited by this, as his mood took a quick turn. Good. She's actually out in the capital with mine right now. She's holding me. Oh, a mission? Naruto perked up, but carefully watching his surroundings. No, just some errands. The fox said, with another slight groan. Naruto knew that Kurama wanted to fight. In a world where so many fought, the fox couldn't resist. I hope they got some more ramen. Naruto added, feeling hungry. He should have eaten in the morning. Is that all you think about? Kurama suddenly blurted out in his mind. No. Naruto quickly shot back at his tailed beast. Ha ha ha. Lies. Kurama laughed. Naruto quickly disconnected the link between them. Stupid fox. He said out loud, looking around his surroundings. He was almost to the meeting point. Naruto sighed and reconnected the link. Lucky for him, Kurama was still talking, unaware that the blonde disconnected the link. Anyway, Tatsumi and a couple others are out on a mission. So Najenda had mine and Shield do this stuff. Wait, I thought Shield was on all the wanted posters around town? The Uzumaki asked. Sure, Shield was an airhead, but she wasn't that big of an airhead. Kurama snicked. She is. But I put a henge on her. Now she looks completely different. Naruto smirked. Hey. Anything to protect your lover. Everything went dead silent for a moment. If Naruto knew any better, he would think Kurama was blushing. Stupid boy. Kurama said quietly. Naruto tried to contain his laughter. The great and powerful Nine Tails was embarrassed. Haha. Keep me posted, Kurama. The blonde said, once his laughter died down. Will do. Kurama said with a slight chuckle, as he disconnected the link. Naruto was then left in silence, as he walked. The shinobi walked through the ruins, already sensing some people in the center of town. One he clearly knew was Esdeath. The others were unknown to him, but if he had to guess, they were Esdeath's men, and the Prime Minister. Should be there in a moment, he said to himself, looking back to the forest where Akame and Leonie sat. And with that, Naruto rounded the corner, and looked into the center of town. Esdeath was staring right at him with a group of Imperial soldiers around her. Ah, Naruto-kun. You finally arrived. Esdeath said with a smile. Naruto slightly cringed as she added the kun to his name. Geez. You really know how to make something so good sound so bad. He chuckled, walking up to them. But making sure to keep his distance, just in case. Oh, Naruto-kun, you don't have to be so rude. Esdeath laughed. Listen, lady. I don't know what you want from me. Naruto said, crossing his arms, eyebrow twitching slightly. I want your love. Esdeath said with a smile. Some of the men around her gasped and others chuckled. But Esdeath shot them glares that practically killed them. Naruto sighed. Not gonna happen. Esdeath put on a sadistic smile. Oh, it will. All I have to do is take care of that little assassin. Naruto immediately narrowed his eyes towards the general. Man, she really knew how to press his buttons. Not gonna let you touch her. Well, see. Esdeath chuckled. Now Esdeath. We're not here to talk about our love lives. A voice said from behind the general. Everyone besides Esdeath, and of course, Naruto, immediately stood at attention to the voice. A moment later, Prime Minister Honest stepped out from behind all of them. Naruto analyzed the man. He had heard all the reports from Night Raid how this man had murdered the last emperor, and installed the new one. Naruto knew this man was clever, and would say anything. This man embodied everything the blonde hated. He couldn't just rush into this. The blonde needed to play smart. So you're the infamous Prime Minister? Naruto asked, taking a step forward. And you're the godlike man I've heard so much about. I've seen a taste of your power. That light show above the capital a couple weeks ago was certainly a statement. Honest said, remembering the event. It was a powerful statement indeed. Naruto decided to go for the direct approach first, even though he had a feeling it wouldn't work. Listen, I already told Esdeath here I am not joining your shitty empire. Honest chuckled. Oh. I know full well that you're not. But I would just like to talk with you about the side you're fighting for. I already know that the Revolutionary Army has a few bad eggs in it. Naruto stated. Knowing Honest was going to bring this up first. Oh? A few? There's much more than that. I sense you are a man of peace. So please hear this out. Naruto knew he needed to get some information. Even if it was flawed beyond high hell, fine. You have my attention, he huffed out. Honest smiled. First and foremost. Have you ever even met the leader of the Revolutionary Army? Naruto in return shook his head no in response. The meeting with the Revolutionary Army leader was set for next week. Oh. Do you think he is a man of peace? One who wants to spread his beliefs about the corruption of the empire to his noble followers. I would assume so, yes, but I doubt that's the case. Naruto sighed. Here we go. He thought to himself. Oh, a smart young lad. The true leader of the Revolutionary Army is a man not from this country, but from the county to the west. They have waged war with us on multiple occasions. The Revolutionary Army is backed by them. He has no plans to liberate this country from its cruel rule, towards a path of peace. He only plans to take the seat of emperor, and claim this land for his country. Honest explained. He will abuse this country much more than I have. Well, at least the fat-ass prime minister knew he was a nut job. But this information with the Revolutionary Army was troubling. Even though he had to take this info with a grain of salt. Why are you telling me this? He finally asked. Because Naruto. I want you to know the full truth. Not the lies that the Revolutionary Army will tell you. They manipulated my best people into becoming theirs. By fooling them with a path of promised peace. But you're different, Naruto. Honest said. Naruto already knew he was trying to butter him up. Oh yeah? How? You don't mindlessly follow the path others have. You blaze your own trail. Honest said with a hideous smile. Naruto sighed. This was getting old. He narrowed his eyes at the Prime Minister. I am still not going to join the Empire, even with your smooth-talking antics. Honest chuckled again, and put up a hand, again. I know. But you will eventually have to choose a path. I only hope you pick what's right. My death will come. I know this. All of the corruption in the capital will be destroyed one day. Naruto thought to himself, well, at least he knew he would eventually die. That was. But, of course I was lying. Honest blurted out. Fuck. Naruto sighed. Here we go. Honest outstretched both of his arms, and raised them up to the sky. The empire will not fall today. No one will kick me off this mighty throne I have built, through murder and deception. I will continue to rule this mighty empire with an iron fist. I will destroy all my enemies. No one will stop me. No one ever has, and no one ever will. I will kill everyone. Even if it's a god. The minister put on a disgusting and hideous smile again, and I will personally devour the little assassin girl, Akame. Naruto's eyes instantly filled with rage. He formed a flaming Rasengan in his hand, and threw it at the Prime Minister. Fuck being clam. He just threatened Akame. The Rasengan barreled through the air towards the Prime Minister. But to Naruto's surprise, the orb went straight through Honest. It just phased through him. Like he wasn't even there. The Rasengan flew into some already destroyed buildings, and instantly incinerated them with a massive explosion. A mushroom cloud appeared above the smoldering remains of the structures. All the soldiers looked over in horror, and Esdeath looked like she was practically being turned on. Just as I thought. Honest said, his voice filling with laughter. You're not real? Naruto asked aloud. I knew if I got you riled up you'd attack me. Honest said, smirking after his laughter died down. But. How? Naruto demanded. He was going to kill someone if this was another Obito incident, where everything passed through him. A small female imperial soldier stepped out from behind the prime minister. She wore a strange-looking silver bracelet on her left hand that glowed white, one of the many Tegus we have. It's called celestial projection. It allows the user to project an image of whatever they like, in whatever desired location. Honest smirked. So this was his plan. The prime minister would never risk showing his face to Naruto. So you're not here? Naruto asked, crossing his arms and scowling. None of us are, Naruto. I knew it would be foolish to meet you in person. Otherwise I would be dead right now, he explained. You're a sadistic and insane piece of shit, Naruto said, staring the man down. This was all so idiotic for Naruto. He couldn't trust either side now. Both were in fault. He always knew who the enemy and allies were. But not now. It wasn't all cut and dry. But the blonde had an idea. A very stupid idea, but first he needed to confirm that the Revolutionary Army was in fact made for evil purposes. Haha. You still have much to learn about our world, Naruto. You can never save this place, Honest yelled out, challenging the blonde. Naruto put one foot forward, and shouted back, oh yeah. Watch me. I'll protect the people from tyrannical leaders like you, and the Revolutionary Army. Honest grinned. This is what he wanted. The blonde was falling nicely into his plan. We shall see, Naruto. Even gods have their weaknesses. Honest said, smirking, as he and his guard began to fade away. Death happily waved to him, to which Naruto practically snarled back at her. In turn, this made her giggle before vanishing completely. Now the blonde was alone. He needed to think. Naruto's mind was all over the place. It was complete bull crap for him. Was this place just filled with greedy bastards, who only care about themselves? Of course it wasn't. He had already met some amazing people. But almost everything about this world just gave him a bad taste in his mouth. Both of these armies, if the prime minister wasn't lying, were only in it for their own personal gain, manipulating the people who thought each cause was noble. Groups like Night Raid who were lied to. It was the actual people who needed to be heard, not these two armies. The wind slowly blew through the village as Naruto thought to himself. Finally, after a few more seconds, the blonde made up his mind. Naruto made 3 shadow clones. They all stood around him anxiously. What's up, boss? One of the clones asked. Yeah. Another asked, crossing his arms. The original slowly breathed in and exhaled. I am giving you 3 an assignment. What would that be? The last one asked. Naruto looked down at his feet. If Night Raid found out about this, then he would almost certainly be kicked out, or they might try to assassinate him. But this needed to be done. I can't wait a week for the Revolutionary Army meeting. He closed his eyes again, then quickly opened them. This time with a sense of purpose filling them. So I want you 3 to find out as much info about the Revolutionary Army as possible. True agendas, leadership, alliances. All 3 clones' eyes widened. Wow, that's very thought out, boss. One of them said, still trying to process all of it. Yeah. Enough messing around. If the Prime Minister's words are true, then I can't support either side, he said, crossing his arms. He would have to make a completely new faction, in an already fucked up country. What will we do then? His copy asked. The blonde smirked. The only thing a Hokage like me would do. Fight the good fight. For the innocent people of this country. If you come back with evidence, then the Revolutionary Army is a no-go. I will have to make my own path. They all nodded, their eyes flooding with the same purpose that their original had. You have until the day of the meeting. No one must know about this. Stay hidden. Roger, boss. They all said with smirks. Now go. Naruto commanded. All 3 clones instantly scattered without a trace, and the blonde was again alone. But not for long. Naruto looked to his right to see Akame and Leone lightly jogging over to him. Naruto. Akame shouted out, running up to him with her sword drawn. What happened? Leone asked, walking up behind her and crossing her arms. The older women scanned the area looking for evidence of a battle, but all she saw was the destroyed house. Naruto looked over at her, and he decided to make a split-second decision. The blonde was going to lie to them. It was for the best. I talked with the minister. He inhaled. No going back now, he told me nothing but lies. As expected. He kept trying to tell me how the Revolutionary Army was as bad as the Empire. Leone's eyes narrowed slightly. Naruto's opinion changed from earlier. He thought both sides were questionable. Now he was acting like the Revolutionary Army was flawless. It was something Leone had to investigate later. She didn't want him getting weary. She was certain he knew more than he let on. Leone hoped Akame knew this too. Akame was always better at putting up a front than Leonie. Heck, she could have been doing it right now, and she'd never know. So to deceive Naruto, she put on a front and smiled at the blonde. Come on. It's not that bad. She laughed, wrapping her arm around his neck. But what was that noise? Akame asked, lowering her sword and relaxing. And the clouds of smoke? Leonie added. I sorta tried to attack the Prime Minister. Naruto laughed nervously. And you missed? Leonie shouted out, putting him in a headlock. Oh, one of his soldiers were using a tegu of some sort. It let them project their image all the way from the capital, he said, pretending to struggle against her grip. Dirty bastards. I knew they'd never play fair, Leonie said, letting go of Naruto, which caused him to fall to the ground. We still don't know a lot about what Tegus the Empire has access to, Akame said, helping the blonde up. Thanks, Akame. Naruto told her. She smiled happily in return. Agreed, Leonie said, smacking both of her fists together with a confident smirk. We need to get back to the hideout, Akame said, knowing they need to report their findings, and Naruto's choice to Najenda. Naruto knew what he had to do. Stand close to me, he said, beginning to form hand signs. The same hand signs that had got them there. Leonie and Akame both stood on either side of him. He had practiced with this just immensely when he had arrived here. Much to Najenda's request, he put his own seal for this move on every member of Night Raid. Just in case. So the blonde exhaled, and narrowed his eyes. Hiraishin no Jutsu. And with that the group disappeared from the northern countryside, but little did they know a far greater danger was being unearthed, much closer to home. Deep underground in the caves directly under the mountains, residing next to the imperial capital, two lone miners work on the ancient rocks, looking for riches. Come on, boy. If we don't find the resources we're looking for, the guards will kill us for being here illegally. An older man shouted to a young man in front, who was chipping away at a rock wall. The younger one couldn't have been any older than 17, he could still be classified as a boy in the older one's eyes. The younger man struggled to break through the rocks while the older man behind him leaned against his pickaxe, drinking a canteen of water. Why you got it? Hey, why were these caves sealed off anyway? The old man shrugged his shoulders. No idea, but I heard this place was a gold mine back in the ancient days of the Empire. The boy groaned, from his annoyance at the older man. Why yeah, the good days of the Empire. Back when it cared about its people. Quit the complaining until after we uncover jewels, gems or whatever. We'll be rich, and can live out our lives without working ever again. The old man shouted with laughter, as it echoed through the cave. Crazy old man. I don't see you working, he muttered to himself as he kept chipping away. But suddenly his pickaxe smashed against something harder. Huh? The young man asked, looking at whatever he hit. It was a strange, fragile, white wall that had a large crack in it from the pickaxe. Hey boss. I found something. What? Let me see. The old man shouted, pushing him out of the way to get a look at the wall. What is it? The younger one asked. The old man put a hand on his chin. Could be a large rock blocking the path. I don't think a rock is this smooth. It almost feels metallic. The boy said, feeling the wall with his hand, just before a pickaxe nearly smashed into his hand beside him. What are you doing? He shouted out, looking back to the old man. Breaking through it, of course. He laughed, smashing into it again with the pickaxe. The boy was getting a sinking feeling in his stomach. They should NT to this. It was buried under a couple layers of rock for a reason. I really don't think you should do that, he protested. Shut it. The old man shouted out, rearing his arms back for another swing. One last go, he shouted, striking the wall again. A couple seconds later the wall blew out, as a large gust of air shot past both of the men, knocking them down. See crap. You okay, old man? The boy asked, struggling to get up. Why yeah. He responded back, getting up, but as he looked back to the wall he saw that a large chamber had been opened up from the other side. He immediately rushed to the chamber, pushing the young man down in the process. Watch out, he shouted back to him. Geez. A little warning would be appreciated, the boy said, getting back up, and following the older man. The old man ran into the chamber. Look at this place, he exclaimed. The chamber was incredibly large with ragged rocks pointing inwards towards the center of the chamber. In the center sat a lone tree, with a hot spring surrounding it. Wow. The boy exclaimed as well, looking all around, his eyes widening. This place was truly something else. Think of all the hidden treasures in here. The old man yelled, literally jumping for joy. As the man jumped, the boy looked down in the center of the spring, and noticed a lone woman sitting in the center, Hey, look over there. He called out to the old man, looking to the center of the room. The man stopped jumping and looked to the center of the room. Is that a woman? He asked, with a smirk. Maybe he found more than one treasure. Both of the men began to walk down the ragged rocks towards the center of the large room. As they walked closer to her, the woman in the center of the room turned her head to them, and the miners could make out what she looked like. The woman had what looked like a high-collared hime kimono, which adorned with gold and purple lines and tomo running down the center and edges of the kimono. The women looked very beautiful with shoulder-length white hair and bright red eyes. Who are you? The young boy asked, walking through the hot spring with the old man next to him. The woman narrowed her eyes at them for walking through the hot spring. Yeah. You're sitting on our gold mine here. The old man screamed out with annoyance, but in his mind, he was thinking of something else. Something more lewd. Humans. The woman growled out, standing up and fully narrowing her eyes at both of the men. Something incredibly large began to stir behind her, which caught both of their attentions. What? The young man asked, looking up towards the stirring object. He didn't notice that the woman was approaching the older man. Well, hello there, pretty girl. The older man said, still holding the smirk on his face. The woman continued to scowl as she raised her arm up. Now how can I help Ga? The old man shouted out in pain. The woman had dug her entire arm into his chest. He looked at her in horror as the boy turned to them. Without a second thought, the woman grabbed his spin and crushed it. She threw the man across the room and his body hit the rocks with a violent splatter. What the hell? The younger man screamed in horror, backing away from her. The woman quickly moved over to him and grabbed his neck. Before I kill you, what is the closet civilization of you pathetic animals? She commanded, tightening her grip. The imperial capital. The boy struggled to say as his throat was being crushed. The woman smirked and licked her lips. Perfect. Now. Her grip strengthened tenfold. Die, pathetic ant. And no please, he screamed out, just before she crushed his throat. He hung in her grip, lifeless, as the woman laughed, and chucked his body into the far ends of the chamber. After she calmed down, she looked over to the dead old man and scoffed, so these insects still exist on the planet. That means my sister left here after she sealed me away. As she finished speaking, an incredibly large red eye began to glow behind her. She turned and smiled up at the eye. Ah, you're awake, my pet. A moment passed before a mighty roar was heard throughout the chamber, followed by more laughter. Find this imperial capital. Burn it to the ground, she commanded to the great beast before her. It roared again before it began to move, causing the entire chamber to begin to shake violently. The women smiled, as she began to move to the exit, and once I rid this planet of the human filth, I'll find you and kill you, Kagaya. Our mother's plans will go on. Our race will be reborn. As the chamber finished shaking, the lone silhouette of Prime Minister Honest emerged from the shadows, his snow-white teeth shining in the darkness. Naruto, Akame, and Leone all walked out of the meeting room back at the hideout. They had just finished explaining to Najenda about what had happened at the meeting in the Northern Lands. Their boss was stoic about the entire thing. Naruto assumed she really didn't have an opinion on the matter yet. But when he left, he noticed Yukari, Air, Fal, and Luna all hiding behind some of the curtains in the meeting room. He chuckled at this. Those girls had certainly been glued to Najenda's side for the past couple of days. Even if the women knew of any corruption in the Revolutionary Army, he was sure she wouldn't harm the girls. But just as a precaution, he always had a clone by them, at the ready. He smirked at this as they walked down the hallway. Man. What should we do now? Leone asked, putting her arms behind her head and looking up to the ceiling as they walked. Maybe something to eat? Akame suggested, her stomach growling. I could go for some ramen. The Uzumaki said with a slight yawn, as his stomach growled too. Is that all you eat? Leone asked teasingly, putting her arm around him. Yes. I mean no. The boy quickly retaliated, laughing in her grip. Akame giggled as well. Leone was happy to see them all happy. But a small blush appeared across her face, when she saw Naruto smile. There was something very attractive to it. All of them found their way into the dining area. Leone and Naruto took a seat at the table, while Akame went into the kitchen to prepare some food. Leone leaned back in her seat, while Naruto had created a miniature Rasengan in his hand, to entrain himself. In truth, this was only a ploy, so Leone didn't think he was up to something. In all reality, he was still deep in thought on what he was going to do. There were many options. He had one goal in mind: protect the innocent people of the Empire at all costs. The Empire was certainly not doing that, and the Revolutionary Army was possibly just a puppet of a neighboring country. The blonde chuckled internally. He was finally acting like a Hokage. Thinking of everything, and protecting the people at all costs. Spill it. Leonie said suddenly, leaning back in her chair while closing her eyes. What? Naruto asked, looking over to her with a confused expression. Crap. Had he been found out? You heard me. Spill it, Naruto. Leonie said. This time with a more demanding tone. I know there's a lot more happening than you're letting on here, Naruto. She leaned back in her chair and narrowed her eyes at him. Crap. 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 She knew. This was bad. But the Uzumaki tried to play it off casually. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't bullshit me, Uzumaki. Leonie said, activating her Tigu, to try and intimidate him. She knew it wouldn't work though. Naruto wasn't scared of anyone here. But to her surprise, the Uzumaki finally caved. He didn't want to keep secrets. Making sure Akame was out of earshot, Naruto leaned in. Looks like I can't get much past you. Tell me. Leonie demanded, playing the tough girl card. Naruto sighed. I don't believe either side is correct in the conflict. What? Leonie asked, slightly confused. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I don't believe that the Revolutionary Army or the Empire are worthy causes to fight for. How can you be sure? Leonie asked, crossing her arms. Well, I know for sure the Empire isn't. But the Prime Minister told me some things I can't ignore about the Revolutionary Army. So I dispatched some clones to do some investigating for me. Naruto revealed to her, lowering his head. Leonie smirked at that, so that was what they saw when they ran up to him in the village. His clones. Smart. At least we think alike, Leonie finally said. Naruto immediately lifted his head up and stared at her. What? Leonie smirked again, and leaned close to him. I have my doubts about the Revolutionary Army as well. I've done my own digging also. What I've come back with hasn't been very positive. Naruto's eyes widened. He was truly shocked. He would have never thought Leonie would do that. She always came off as a very carefree and good-looking girl to him. A slight blush appeared on his face from the last thought. What do you mean? He asked, shaking away the blush. Leonie saw this and found it cute. But then she narrowed her eyes again. Puppet states, slave trade, enemy invasion. Also rumors of turning this country over to the West once the war's over. She revealed, I am sure your clones will find the same, and even worse. The blonde nodded. He was sure now that he would find these things. Leonie has no reason to lie to him. What are you going to do? The Uzumaki asked, knowing that she probably would have some plan. I am assuming you already have a plan. Leonie asked, moving closer him. Yeah. Somewhat. The blonde shrugged. Knowing he hadn't fully thought out of his plan. Some parts were there, but not everything. Then I'll be joining you. Leonie smiled and giggled out. Naruto's eyes widened, and he sat back in his chair. Much to Leonie's disappointment. What? He finally asked. Why in the world would she say something like this? Naruto slowly sat up, as Leonie began to speak again. You have a good head on your shoulders, Naruto. One that I can really get behind. I feel you'll make an amazing leader. She said, as another more genuine smile formed on her face. You'll fight for the people, not personal gain. She took a quick breath, then chuckled. Funny, I've been in a situation like this before. Really? Naruto asked, tilting his head. She nodded. Yeah. Back before I got my Tigu, there was a powerful gang that controlled the area of town I was in. Everyone hated them. They didn't care about anyone but themselves, and would downright kill people on the streets. Everyone lived in fear of them. But then a new gang moved into the territory. They came off as being much nicer than the others, and helped people. But in reality they weren't. After they killed the other gang, they installed harsh rules we all had to abide by. They raped women in broad daylight, killed kids, hung people from the roofs. What happened to them? Naruto asked, leaning in. Clearly intrigued about her story, and also sickened. This world, he needed to fix it. Eventually the Imperial Guard came in and took them all out, but not before almost everyone I knew was killed. She said, looking down with a frown, reliving the old memories. Naruto saw this and gently put one of his hands on hers to try and offer some comfort to her. The Uzumaki still didn't know why this world was so cruel. Sure, his world wasn't perfect either, but at least there was actual law and order for the sake of the people there, not just the words. Leonie looked down at his hand, and her face softened as she continued, as you can already assume. I grew up in the slums of the capital. I'd always stand by and watch, as those gangs killed more and more innocent people each day. I always hoped that someone would fall out of the sky and kick their asses. Be a hero, like in the books I used to read as a little girl. Leonie gripped his hand, and looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Naruto frowned. It was clearly shown in her eyes, Leonie was afraid. Afraid of her life, and the future of this world. If she went with the Revolutionary Army, she'd be trading one demon for another. She was looking for a way out. A third option, and now, you're here, Naruto. The Uzumaki's eyes widened, as his head shot up at her, my hero. Leonie added, placing a soft kiss on his lips. If Naruto was in sage mode, he would have noticed the large amount of natural energy starting to circulate around her left hand. Just like Akame. Little did both of them know that Akame had listened to the entire conversation and was now gripping her sword tightly. Her body shook uncontrollably for a moment. She was pissed, but not because of Naruto and Leonie. Akame loved both of them very dearly. And she knew Leonie had a crush on the blonde as well. She was pissed at the Revolutionary Army, and Najenda. Their leader had to have known about all the dark secrets of the rebels. She had been so blind to follow some false flag, but not anymore. She would not be played for a fool. She would be with Naruto and protect her sister. Akame decided to make her presence known and walked out. Leonie and Naruto were still kissing as Akame walked out. The two quickly jerked away from each other and stared at the red-eyed swordswoman. Akame. I didn't mean to. Leonie said with a blush. Naruto began blush as well, looking at her, Akame. We were just. He stuttered out, poking both of his index fingers together the way Hinata did back in his world. Naruto was sure that she was furious with both of them. Akame approached Naruto, and to his surprise she sat on his lap. I heard what you two were talking about. I knew something was wrong with Naruto the moment we left the village, she said, looking over to Leonie. Are you going to tell Najenda? The blonde woman asked. Akame shook her head. No, Najenda most likely knows about the corruption in the Revolutionary Army, and is hiding it from us. I want to stand beside Naruto, and you too, Leonie. A force against both of these opposing sides. It won't be easy. Especially with so much support going to the Revolutionary Army nowadays. Leonie said, feeling relieved that Akame wasn't mad that she kissed Naruto. We need to expose them to the public. Maybe find some records of some sort. Naruto said, crossing his arms, thinking. Or documentation that they have direct connections with the Western country. Akame added. Agreed. Leonie said, nodding her head. Naruto sighed and leaned back. I'll have my clones try to dig up as much info as possible. Akame nodded to him, just so we're clear. What we're creating here is for the people. Anyone can join, if they're willing. A way to amend your past. Even if you know you'll die. She added. Specifically thinking of her younger sibling. Who now may be able to join her. Agreed. Naruto and Leonie said in unison. We'll have to think of a name and location later. Naruto said. Once that's done, then we can rally support behind our cause. Leonie said, putting her hands on the table. She already had quite a few people in mind that would be more than willing to join their cause. Naruto was being to smirk, and jumped up in the air with Akame in his arms. Haha. Yeah. Then we'll knock some sense into anyone who thinks they can mess with us, and this country. Leonie giggled, and hugged the blonde tightly when he came back down to the ground. Akame laughed as well, as they were both smashed into Leone's breasts. Leonie then immediately licked the blonde's ear, effectively marking him. Naruto, being Naruto, he didn't even notice. Oh, Leonie. Akame said, quickly remembering something. Yeah? She responded, pushing Naruto's head into her chest further. I was quite surprised you kept your feelings for Naruto so well hidden from the others. Leonie shouted out. Akame smiled. She could tell that Leonie already found Naruto quite attractive when she first met him, but Leonie was exceptionally good at hiding her true feelings behind her happy-go-lucky mask. There were some times that she would catch Leonie watching the blonde during training. Akame didn't mind this at all. She was quite happy, in fact. Well. You know I just. Leonie stammered out, hiding behind Naruto's back. Akame, in turn, giggled. One rule. I get first kiss. She said, planting a kiss on the blonde's lips. Leone's eyes widened. Naruto's eyes went wide as well. Akame was surprisingly okay with this. He thought she'd smash his head in like Sakura did. Leonie smirked, and pulled Naruto away from her. Oh, you're Saan, she said, smashing her lips against Naruto's again. But while the three enjoyed this new-formed relationship, something terrible was about to happen hundreds of miles away in the imperial capital. something that would put Naruto's skills to the test. Mine, Shield, and Kurama all walked down an empty road of the imperial capital. The sun was still setting over the enormous walls of the imperial capital. Mine walked freely about while Shield had a henge over her. Thanks to the little fox running behind her. Shield almost looked like herself, but she instead of long purple hair, she had short brown hair. She was a white jacket and blue-fitting jeans, with brown boots. All in all, she blended in as a normal civilian. Come on, Kurama. Mine griped, as she held the large suitcase that held her pumpkin. It was disguised as a musical instrument case, so no one would take too much notice. The same could be said for Shield's ecstasy. Coming. The fox said, hopping along next to Shield. But she didn't take too much notice to him, as her eyes grew wide at the gorgeous sunset in front of them. The sunset is so beautiful, she exclaimed. Kurama and Mine smiled at Shield. It was true that sometimes she acted like a child, but that wasn't a bad thing. When are Tatsumi and the others supposed to finish their mission? Mine suddenly asked, taking her attention off Shield and putting it onto Kurama. The fox shrugged his shoulders, no idea. Lubbock and Bullet are with them, so it could take a bit. He looked around the town for a second, and then continued, another mansion right? He added. Yeah. I think. They've started to turn into Night Raid's second team. Mine sighed, remembering when Night Raid was smaller. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because now she could do things like this. Kurama smirked, hey. I can see it. Tatsumi and his friends certainly have talent. He put on a smug expression. Mine sighed. But when Kurama looked back to Shield who was about to round a street corner, his smug look turned into a small smile. Mine saw this, and gently kicked his side. You know, for a god like Fox you're awfully nice to Shield, she teased. Well that's because she isn't an idiot, Kurama said, looking away from her with a confident smirk, but if is on cue, Shield rounded the corner and crashed into a woman. Wah! Shield said, falling backwards and hitting the ground. Her weak henge disappeared as she hit the ground. OWW. The woman that she hit yelped out as she fell flat on her face. You sure about that? Mine said with a deadpanned expression, and Kurama ran over to Shield. No one even noticed the strange-looking dog behind the girl. Are you okay? He asked, putting a paw on her shoulder, but then he looked closer to see that the henge wore off. She looked like her normal self, in hostile territory, damn. The henge wore off, he added. I am sorry, Shield said, bowing to him as she got up and dusted herself off. Don't be. It's not your fault, he said, smiling up at her. She nodded happily in return and he turned to the women. Are you all right, miss? She asked. Kurama really didn't care if they freaked out that he was a talking fox. Why yeah. The women said, looking up to them as Mine approached. The woman's eyes narrowed as they landed on Shield, and she gripped something tightly in her hand. Kurama looked over to see a wanted poster in her hand, crumpled up, with the picture of Shield on it. Night Raid. The women spat out, lowering her head. Mine, and Shield quickly took notice of the wanted poster and moved away at lightning speed. They moved into a park-like area, surrounded by trees. Crap. Mine called out, unzipping the suitcase. Shield began to do the same with hers. Kurama moved away to Shield's side. What luck. You walk right into me. The woman shouted out. They could now see she wore an Imperial Guard uniform. This wasn't good. Listen lady. Stop this. You won't win here. Mine said, loading pumpkin. The woman smirked demonically, haha. I am so glad I waited out here for you. I've wanted to meet you very badly, Night Raid. She pointed her finger directly at Shield. You're the one from the wanted poster, and judging by your friend's weapon she's a Night Raid member as well. Both Night Raid members kept neutral expressions on their faces, but in reality a million things were rolling across their minds at once. I couldn't even sense her presence, Mine said, raising pumpkin. She's on a completely different level than the other guards, Shield said, holding ecstasy. Could you sense her, Kurama? Mine asked, looking down at the now growling fox. Shield and Mine hadn't noticed, but that weird dog thing had joined her. This was no doubt the same woman Naruto met a couple weeks ago. No, he finally said, getting into a fighting stance. Something was blocking him from sensing normal humans. It was starting to annoy him. The girl laughed insanely, and pulled out two strange guns. Both had no sights and looking exactly identical. I am Imperial Guard Seryu Ubiquitous, and in the name of absolute justice you will die right here right now, she screamed out. Mine smirked back. Well, since you've blown my cover, you can either come with us or die. Seryu pointed her finger at Mine with an insane look. My commanding officer says you're wanted dead or alive. That means I can execute you where you stand. You're the reason my father and my mentor Captain Orge are dead. I'll kill you both where you stand, she screamed. So you're that eager to fight us? Fine. I'll make this quick. Mine shouted back, firing pumpkin at her with incredible speed and accuracy. Soon a cloud of smoke appeared around Seryu and everything went quiet. Did I hit her? Mine asked, lowering her gun and looking into the smoke. Suddenly a massive roar was heard through the smoke, and a few moments later a large dog-like creature blocked all the shots. Holes riddled the creature's body, but soon began to heal. Is that what I think it is? Sheil asked, staring at the creature, her body slightly shaking. An organic-type Tegu. Mine said, narrowing her eyes, and putting a new attachment on Pumpkin for more powerful shots. Sheil narrowed her eyes, and looked down to Kurama. We need to think this out carefully. Kurama. She paused when she realized the fox was no longer sitting next to her. Kurama? She asked, looking around. Kurama, what are you doing? Mine suddenly called out, pointing forward. Sheil directed her gaze towards where Mine was pointing. Kurama stood directly in front of the dog monster, a scowl on his muzzle. You are one messed up mutt, he said, wagging his 9 tails. He knew that little dog was creepy as hell. Grr. The creature growled, looking down at Kurama. Seryu looked at the fox as well. She was confused. Why could this thing talk? And why was it with Night Raid? I hate dogs. Kurama said, growling back as the dog thing swiped at him with its hands. Kurama easily jumped up in the air to dodge, too slow. The fox taunted out still in the air. He didn't notice the other fist approaching him, but Mine and Sheil did. Kurama. Sheil called out, trying to rush to him, but Mine grabbed her collar and stopped her. The 9 tails looked over in time to see the fist inches away from his face. Crap. He said out loud as the fist connected with his face. The fox was sent flying straight into a nearby building. A violent cloud of debris flew from the structure. No. Sheil cried out, looking to the building. Sheil, focus. Mine called back, aiming her gun at the giant dog. Seryu came into clear view, and laughed. Well, that was easy. She smiled disgustingly and pointed her guns forward. Tonfa guns. The guns immediately began to fire towards the two. Sheil and Mine began to dodge the bullets. Both moved to each side of her, and her Tegu. Looks like shooting won't be effective at this range. Seryu thought to herself, lowering her guns. Instead she turned to the dog. Koro. Supper time. Seryu screamed out, pointing directly to Sheil. The beast, now known as Koro, roared out, and jumped towards Sheil with an extreme amount of bloodlust. Sheil in turn opened up her ekstase, and aimed it at Koro. The beast still launched towards her, with rage filling its eyes. Sheil narrowed her eyes, and sliced across Koro's head. The beast cried in agony as it tumbled across the ground, causing dust to be knocked up into the air. I am sorry, Sheil said, closing her eyes. But suddenly from the dust cloud, Koro began to rise as the side of his head quickly regenerated. Sheil. Mine called out, looking into the dust cloud. Sheil looked behind her and she visibly shook at the sight of the demonic-looking Koro. Mine prepared to fire Pumpkin, while Seryu stood in a tree waiting. As Koro bared down on Sheil and opened his mouth to devour her, a large orange fist connected with its face. Koro was sent flying into the nearby trees with a loud crash soon following. Don't you dare touch her. Kurama roared out in his chakra mode. But because he only had part of his chakra with him, he was only about the size of Koro. What? Koro. Seryu cried out, seeing her Tegu be easily thrown around. She turned back to see Kurama standing proudly in the street as the sunlight reflected off of him. Kurama stood defensively as he roared out. So loud that everyone in the capital could hear him, including the other Night Raid members, but also Esdeath and her troops. Kurama. We're trying to be stealthy. Mine shouted out, lighting up Seryu with Pumpkin. Seryu in turn began to dodge, heading back into the tree line. That went out the window when she released that dog thing, Kurama shouted back, pointing into the trees. Seryu was breathing heavily, as she took a perch up on a tree branch. She scanned the area for Koro. After a moment she noticed Koro lazily getting up from a smoking hole in the ground. She turned back to the direction where Kurama stood, and stared at him. Seryu visibly shook in terror. God. I need more help. She stuttered out, taking a small whistle, and blowing into it. Kurama's ears instantly picked the sound, and he darted his head to the trees. Shit. She called for more reinforcements. Kurama roared out. We're going to need to leave. Mine shouted, firing Pumpkin into the trees. Sheil nodded with her. Seryu heard this and lowered her head. Her loose brunette locks covered her eyes. Koro was directly under her. Saryu clenched her fist and lifted up her head in rage. She would not be defeated so easily. Not in the name of justice, Koro. Tear it apart, she screamed out with insane rage. Koro nodded, and charged Kurama. The fox already saw this coming, and his tails raised in defense. The Tegu rushed towards him with pure rage, but the kitsune was ready. But suddenly something else entered the very edge of his sensing radar, and he paused. In turn Koro socked Kurama right in his cheek. Kurama. Mine and Shield shouted out in unison, worrying for the fox. But Kurama simply waved off the punch, and hit Koro with two of his tails. The Tegu tumbled over on the ground, and into a tree. Kurama was no longer worried about Koro, but more about the increasingly large energy presence nearing them. The hell is this? This power, it's nothing like anything in this world. He thought to himself as Koro got back up. Let's retreat, Kurama. Mine said, reloading pumpkin. We can't leave. Kurama suddenly barked back, shocking both of the girls. Why? Mine asked, backing away from the front of the fox as Koro charged for another attack. Something is coming, he shouted out, grabbing Koro with four of his tails and smashing it on the ground repeatedly. Saryu jumped down from half the Imperial Army. Mine yelled, firing at Saryu, while Shield stayed back, knowing she didn't want to get close. No, something much worse, Kurama said, chuckling Koro across the fountain area. Oh yeah? What? Mine asked as Koro got back up for another attack. Kurama didn't know what to call it. He was completely sure that it wasn't any human. It was just too powerful. No one here compared to it besides Naruto. So he could only come up with one possible suspect. He sighed, a Kaiser-class danger beast. Both Mine and Shield paused for a moment as Kurama tore Koro in half with his mouth. Saryu gasped, as Kurama threw both pieces of Koro up in the air. This was hardly a fight. What? Mine stammered out. It couldn't be. They had barely defeated one, and it was all thanks to Naruto. There was no way this could be a Kaiser class. Impossible. This close to the capital. Shield protested, as both pieces of Koro nearly smashed into Saryu. Kurama shook his head. I am not for sure. But whatever it is, it's far more powerful than me. It rivals Naruto when he uses my full chakra. A Kaiser class is the only option here. Then we really need to get out of here, Mine pleaded, knowing that Saryu wasn't a threat with Kurama around. This thing is moving way too fast. We won't get out of here in time. Kurama protested just as Koro regenerated again and pounced on him. The Tegu bit into Kurama's neck, pissing him off. Saryu began to fire her guns again at Mine, who was effortlessly dodging the bullets. Get off me! Kurama roared, getting pissed and annoyed at the Tegu. He grabbed Koro's neck and held him up to his mouth. Within a split second Kurama had made a small-tailed beast ball in his mouth. You're so annoying, he shouted, releasing the tailed beast ball through Koro's body. Effectively shattered his core. Kurama didn't even know about the core, he just fired. A large hole now burned right through Koro's chest, and he went flying towards Saryu. Saryu in turn looked up in shock at her now deceased Tegu. She couldn't move, it was going to land right on her. She wasn't fast enough. Saryu didn't realize this until the last second, when reality snapped back in. No! She suddenly screamed out, as the large corpse smashed into her. Blood splattered everywhere. Mine and Shield breathed heavily, looking over at the corpse of Koro and the blood spattered on the ground. That was too easy, Kurama said, swinging his tails back and forth. Crazy bitch. Mine said, taking the barrel off of Pumpkin. If Kurama wasn't here this could have turned out a lot different, and Mine knew this. She reminded herself to thank him later. Everyone alright? Shield asked, looking over to Mine and then up to Kurama. Yeah thanks. The fox said, looking down at her with a small grin. Mine crossed her arms and looked towards the sunset. Their battle didn't even take long to her surprise. The warm summer air felt nice to her, it was almost peaceful. But then she remembered Kurama's warning about the danger beast. We need to contact Naruto. Mine said, turning back around. Both of her companions nodded. Mine. Shield. Kurama. A voice suddenly called out behind them. The three turned their head to the source of the voice. To their surprise Tatsumi was running up to them with the rest of Night Raid following, excluding Naruto, Leone, Akame, and their boss. Tatsumi. Mine shouted out, waving to him. Tatsumi had a bright smile on his face, as he reached them. A moment later, the rest of the team was with them. We heard Kurama's roar and tracked it back here. What happened? Bullet asked, in his full set of armor. That bitch over there tried to kill us, but with Kurama here we made quick work of her. Mine said, with a confident smirk, pointing back to the corpse of Koro. Bullet quickly looked over, and analyzed the corpse for a brief second. Did she call for reinforcements? He asked. Yes. Shield said as Kurama reverted back into his regular form and plopped down into Shield's arms. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Lubbock demanded and Tatsumi nodded in agreement. They both knew the team should be gone by now. We can't leave. Mine simply said, looking over to Kurama. Why? Both Lubbock and Tatsumi asked, blood rushing from their faces. Kurama is tracking a Kaiser-class danger beast. It's on its way here to the capital, Shield said, petting the fox's head. What? No way, that's insane, Doya said, crossing her arms. Seo agreed with her. Yeah. Not something this close to the capital, Bullet said, shaking his head. Kurama sighed. Well, whatever it is, it's on its way fast. I've made contact with Naruto. He'll be here shortly. Kurama explained to them. Actually, since Tatsumi showed up, Kurama has been talking with Naruto. Tatsumi began to walk to Kurama. Then he was abruptly interrupted by an ice spike that flew directly in front of his face. He fell back into Mine's chest, who immediately began to blush. I thought I heard little rats. Death shouted out, landing in the middle of the group. Everyone froze up for a moment, and soon her soldiers rushed into the fountain area. Death. Lubbock yelped, moving backwards quickly. Everyone immediately put up their guards, and aimed their weapons at her. This is bad. Doya said. No Naruto around was a big problem when dealing with this woman. Death giggled, and walked up to Tatsumi and Mine. Haha. I didn't think I would find almost all of Night Raid in one place. A few new members I see, she said, poking Tatsumi's cheek. Kurama growled. They didn't need this now. There was particularly an asteroid nearly on top of them, and he had to deal with the crazy ice bitch. He lost his temper. Gah. We don't have time for this, Death. The general directed her attention towards the fox and Shield. Kurama growled again. Who's that? Oh, aren't you that little fox that's always with Naruto? Death asked. One of Kurama's eyebrows twitched. There's a Kaiser-class danger beast on its way to the capital right now. You have to prepare. Did I hear Kaiser? One of Death's soldiers asked. Oh man, we're so fucked. One of them gulped. Many of her other men said similar things. This greatly angered her. Silence. Do not believe their lies, she barked out. All of them immediately shut up. You have to believe me. Its power level is off the charts. Naruto may not be able to beat it with me, Kurama said, with another growl. Shield softly pet him to try and calm him down. Death Simple scoffed at this and laughed. But as soon as she did, an extremely loud roar was heard. Everyone paused, including Death. Kurama lowered his ears. What the hell was that? Lubbock asked as a large cloud of smoke rose over the city wall, shortly followed by an explosion. It's here, Kurama said, slightly whimpering. Whatever the hell this thing was, it even had the nine tails scared. Almost immediately after, multiple objects shot through the city wall and flew towards them at high speed. Incoming. One of the soldiers shouted, as the objects approached the city. The members of Night Raid ran into the trees to get cover, while Death's men hid in the buildings across from the fountain. A few moments later, the objects pelted the city. A few houses were smashed, as well some street. One's object even smashed into the fountain. After a few moments, everything went silent in Night Raid and Death peeked out of their respective covers. Is everyone alright? Bullet asked, looking around at his team. In return, they all nodded. What the hell was that? Lubbock asked, looking at the object that crashed into the fountain. Once the dust cleared, both sides got a clear view of the object. It was a chunk of some creature. It still bleed, so it was recently tore from whatever body it came from. It's a body part, Tatsumi said as one of Death's men ran out and checked it. After a moment, he looked at the creature and his face paled. The soldier slowly turned back to his side. Ma'am. These are parts from our ultra-class danger beasts that guard the land just outside the walls. It's coming. Kurama stammered out as an incredibly loud bang was heard from the city wall. What the hell is that? One of the soldiers asked, looking up to the source. Almost at the very top of the city wall, it was cracked, along with the few holes put through it by the danger beast remains. Everyone remained quiet, as another bang was heard, and the crack got larger. After a few more seconds, it didn't seem like another was coming. But one final bang was heard throughout the capital and the wall shattered. Everyone gasped and their mouths hung open. Immediately following, a black object burst through the wall and landed on the ground below. It created a massive shockwave when it hit the ground, destroying everything in a certain radius, killing dozens on impact. It broke through the wall like it was nothing. Doya gulped. The creature suddenly jumped in the air and began to land near the already destroyed fountain. Move now. Bullet called out as he pushed everyone further back into the trees. The creature landed in the area with another shockwave, destroying everything near the fountain. The front rows of trees were also incinerated. Some Imperial soldiers weren't quick enough to move away. They were burned to death. Is everyone all right? Bullet asked. Yeah. We're good, Doya said, giving him a thumbs up. Bullet sighed with relief. The hell kinda danger beast is that? Lubbock demanded, pointing to it. As Kurama's eyes landed on it, they widened. It looked like the 10 tails, although in its earlier form. But instead of brown skin, it had white skin with bright red glowing lines all over its body. This truly was bad. But why in the hell would something like this even be here? That's no danger beast. Kurama growled. What? Lubbock asked, turning to him, as well as the rest of Night Raid. The fox gulped. It looks like a miniature version of the 10 tails. 10 tails? Everyone asked, as Bullet watched the creature. A massive beast that is made up of all the tailed beast. But this one is different. There's no tailed beasts here. Not even Chakra. The 9 tails said, scowling at the hideous creature. How could it be here? Was it one of the 10 tails clones that went through the portal with them? We need Naruto, Shield said, hugging Kurama. The 9 tails agreed with her as well. They needed someone to stand up to it. Attack. The Imperial troops suddenly shouted out, rushing the creature with swords and guns. Dozens of them ran out of the building. Esdeath charged straight forward with them. Those fools, Kurama said, shaking his head in disappointment. They would all be slaughtered by the creature. The 10 tails look-alike turned to them, and its lone eye glowed bright red. Esdeath quickly turned to the right, knowing what was about to happen. Move. She shouted back to her soldiers. But it was too late for them. The creature's eye released an incredibly bright red beam of energy that was directed towards the soldiers. All of them were instantly incinerated, turning into nothing but piles of ashes. Esdeath slid to the right of the beam and got into a defensive stance. Night Raid remained in the trees watching the entire showdown. Oh man. She's going to get slaughtered, Tatsumi said, gripping his sword, watching her. For some reason he wanted to jump into the battle, but he didn't know why. Relax, Tatsumi. She's an enemy. This is good, Bullet said, gripping the boy's shoulder. Bullet knew they weren't in a good situation at all. But if Esdeath was taken out here, then some good could come out of this. Finally a real challenge. Face me. Esdeath shouted out, making an ice sword and laughing at the creature. This fight really got her blood running. But the creature was in no mood to play games. It scowled at Esdeath and began to approach her. The Imperial General in turn created multiple ice arrows and launched them at the 10 tails look-alike. Weak human. The beast suddenly said in a gravely and monstrous voice, as the ice arrows bounced off of its skin. It stared at her for another moment before suddenly disappearing. What? Esdeath asked, bringing up her guard, looking all around. Night Raid still watched from the trees, holding their breaths. Tear you apart. The beast suddenly shouted out, appearing as quick as lightning in front of her. Esdeath brought up her guard to protect herself. Ice formed around the front of her arms, but it wasn't going to help. The creature reared back its fist, and punched immediately through her guard. Esdeath's ice guard shattered and she was smashed against the ground. She skid across the concrete on her back, until she abruptly came to a stop in the middle of the area where the fountain used to be. She staggered, getting up from the ground holding one of her arms. That thing's punch was enough to level even their strongest Tegu. Raw. It screamed out, appearing in front of her again. This time it gripped her face and raised her above the ground. Ah! She screamed out in agony as it began to crush her head with its hand. The creature seemed to snicker at this. It was enjoying inflicting pain on her. The 10 tails look-alike was so entranced by this that it didn't even notice the extremely large chakra signature appear above it. Esdeath pushed through the pain and moved her gaze to look down at the creature. She gritted her teeth and closed one of her eyes. The strong survive and the weak die. She grunted out as the creature applied more pressure. Rasengan. Naruto suddenly screamed out with valor, as he struck the beast from above with his signature move. Esdeath was ripped from the beast's hands by one of the blonde's clones. 2 more of his clones landed behind them, carrying Leone and Akame. What? Esdeath asked, blinking and looking up at the blonde's clone. In turn he looked down at her, eyes filled with purpose. "And I told you that it's the job of the strong to protect the weak," he said, smirking. "Naruto?" she stammered out, looking at him. She hadn't expected this. The original now stood in front of them, holding up his right hand. The beast, after quickly recovering, focused all its attention on the blonde. Everyone was frozen. They could practically see the energy flowing out of the two. Both Night Raid and S-Death knew they were in the presence of gods. The creature moved first as it lunged towards him, eyes filled with rage. Everyone held their breath as the blonde formed an incredibly large Rasengan in his arm. He narrowed his eyes and swung the ball of chakra around to the beast. It scraped the concrete as it flew to the enemy. The creature's lone eye widened as it realized what was coming its way. "Odama Rasengan!" Naruto shouted out as his move connecting with the monster's chest. The amount of kinetic force that was created was enough to level the Imperial Palace. The 10 Tails look-alike was sent flying back to the wall which it had first broken through. It impacted, smashing right through, and destroying most of the wall with it. All the debris flew outward with the creature to the area outside of the Imperial capital. Naruto looked up at the destroyed wall with a smirk. He knew the thing wasn't defeated, but that gave him some time to think and gather some info. The blonde turned back to see S-Death still in his clone's grasp, and she had a smile on her face. Naruto sighed. He didn't want to deal with this right now. The Uzumaki simply snapped his fingers, both his clone and S-Death disappeared. Transported to a safer distance. But now he had to do the harder task. Get Night Raid to leave, including Akame and Leone. He had already not wanted them to come in the first place. But they were too stubborn to change their minds. "Naruto!" Tatsumi called out, running towards him. The rest of Night Raid followed him with relief in their faces. Naruto grinned his teeth. As much as he loved those guys, he had to get them away quickly. So he decided to go for the direct approach. "Everyone get out of here," he yelled back to them. Almost everyone stopped dead in their tracks. Almost everyone, Leone and Akame, still ran towards him. "What?" Lubbock asked, confused as Leone and Akame stood on each side of Naruto with concerning expressions. "This thing is too powerful for you guys. It'll tear this place apart," he said, nearly snarling at them. He didn't want any of them to get hurt or killed. Tatsumi stepped forward, but Mine gripped his shoulder. "But Naruto," he began, but was immediately cut off as rumbling began from the smashed-up wall. Naruto was too late. The abomination was coming back. He knew this wasn't going to be easy from what he felt and what Kurama told him. This thing was incredibly powerful, rivaling his Kurama mode even. "It's coming back," Naruto said, clenching his fist and looking to the wall. "Leave now, please," he pleaded back to Night Raid. But before they could respond, the beast burst through the lower part of the wall, causing the entire section to crumble. It raced through the streets towards Naruto, destroying everything in its path. The blonde activated his Kurama cloak, and pushed Leone and Akame away from him. The beast bursts through the trees at high speeds towards the Uzumaki. Naruto braced for the impact, putting both of his arms up. The creature in turn smashed into the Uzumaki, and grabbed him still sprinting. "TCH. Naruto groaned as he struggled in the beast's grip. Suddenly, without warning, the creature shot up into the sky with Naruto. "Naruto!" Akame screamed out, watching him be taken away. "Damn it!" Leone shouted, using her enhanced strength to jump up, trying to reach the blonde. But he was too high, and she couldn't reach him. The beast took the blonde high up into the air, above the clouds. Soon the sound of explosions and bright colors lit up the sky. The rest of Night Raid sprinted from the trees, looking up to the sky. "It can fly?" Lubbock asked, clearly stunned. Everyone else was clearly shocked as well. But before anyone could comment, another roar was heard behind them, and another identical creature burst through the trees. It nearly took Tatsumi's head off as it passed over the group. "Another one?" Mine asked, clearly afraid. She went to hold onto Tatsumi. Everyone else backed away in fear, as the creature came to a stop in front of them. They knew they were in deep shit without Naruto here. The 10 Tails look-alike scowled down at them. Night Raid backed away in fear, as its eye began to glow red. "It's a clone." One of Naruto's copy shouted as he came out of nowhere, and sucker punched the creature straight in the jaw. It was pushed away by several feet, but quickly recovered. It turned back to Naruto's clone, and roared out, "This world will burn." Within a second, the creature appeared in front of the clone, and grabbed it with one hand. The clone struggled in its grip, and turned to Akame and Leone. "Akame, evacuate the civilians in the area. Kurama says multiple new targets are coming in." What? The assassin shouted out, looking up at him. She tried to run up to him, but was stopped by Leone. The clone smirked back to them as the creature's clone roared at him. A split second later, it shoved its hand into the clone's stomach. Gah! He grunted out before disappearing into a poof of smoke. Naruto. Leone shouted out, feeling slightly hurt from seeing her lover's clone being destroyed. Akame felt the feeling as well, gripping her sword. Almost immediately, Naruto's other clone jumped in and slammed a Rasengan to the beast's stomach. The rest of Night Raid retreated across the street into an alleyway. Akame literally had to pull Leone away. After all of them were safely in the alley, Tatsumi turned to his team leader in the set of demon armor. Bullet, what do we do? Bullet wrinkled his eyebrow under the Incursio helm. He knew it was a must to report back to Najenda, and this wasn't Night Raid's fight. They weren't technically part of the Revolutionary Army's main fighting force. In all actuality, he just wanted to get everyone home safely. He knew Naruto wouldn't stand long against this thing. Maybe he could buy them time. It was a tough decision, but after a bit longer he made his decision. This isn't our fight, Tatsumi. Everyone instantly turned to him, shock filling their faces. Bullet. Leone said, turning to him with anger. Akame did the same, gripping her sword handle harder. We have to retreat. Bullet said, looking up through the buildings to the sky. The sky still flashed, and small shockwaves rocked the clouds. Tatsumi looked down for a moment, then looked back up, But nothing, Tatsumi. We have to retreat. If this thing lays waste to the capital, then this will give a major advantage to the Revolutionary Army. Bullet shouted out, looking down at the boy. Tatsumi was still young, but eventually he would understand. But all these people. Tatsumi began looking up at Bullet. War's not pretty, Tatsumi. Lubbock added, standing behind him clutching his fist. Lubbock knew there was nothing they could do to help Naruto. You heard Kurama. This thing is just as powerful as Naruto. Hell die if we don't help him. I won't abandon my friend. Tatsumi protested. Lubbock looked up, clearly irritated, and walked over to him. Look, this isn't some happy story where everyone lives. People are going to die to make change. Naruto will just have to. Lubbock was stopped by a large hand grabbing his collar and lifting him up. Gah! He shouted, looking down at the owner of the hand. You leave him, and he'll never forgive you. Leone said, looking up at him with rage. Leone didn't know why her teammates were acting like this. They never abandoned a teammate. Something was wrong here. Were they truly scared of this creature? Leone. Lubbock stuttered out, struggling in her grip. Everyone was extremely tense, watching the situation unfold. Whoa. Calm down, Leone. Bullet said, walking towards them. Trying to defuse the situation before Leone tore Lubbock apart. The blonde immediately turned to him, dropping Lubbock, and walking up to him. No, I won't leave him. Bullet clenched his teeth, and looked down at her, crossing her arms. Listen, Naruto can hold it off while we escape. He was immediately interrupted by Murasama being pointed in his face. I am staying. Akame said, with a neutral tone. Akame, you too. Lubbock shouted out, getting up off the ground. Oh, who was Lubbock kidding? Of course she would stay. She was practically glued to Naruto. The same could be said for Leone now as well. Bullet just stared at Akame before Leone came up behind her and gripped her shoulder. Come on, Akame. He needs our help. Right. Akame agreed, and with that both of them ran out of the alleyways. Wait. Tatsumi shouted to them, but it was too late. The two were already gone. Give it up, Tatsumi. We have to go. It's not an assassin's job to fight a battle like this. Bullet said, looking away from him. Tatsumi clenched his fist. Why in the hell was Bullet so unwilling to help? Isn't that what Night Raid did? Help people. He was so frustrated, he lowered his head, hair covering his eyes. I am not going to stand here and act weak. Huh? Bullet asked, turning back around. Not Tatsumi too. The young man looked up at Bullet, eyes filled with purpose. He was tired of all these assassin business bullshit. I am going. I don't care if we're assassins. If being an assassin means I have to abandon my friends, then I quit Night Raid, he shouted out, turning and running out of the alleyway. Tatsumi, wait. Both Mine and Seo said in unison. But after a few seconds it was clear that the boy wasn't coming back. Bullet needed to think of something fast. He was losing members left and right. He's right. Mine finally said, looking over to the Incursio user. Sheil nodded in agreement. Kurama had long since disappeared from her arms, giving her more reason to help. Some of the others began to agree with her. Bullet spun around. Mine. Sheil. The rest of you. He said, looking at everyone. Besides Lubbock and himself, everyone else showed signs of agreeing with mine. We can't abandon them, Doya said, gripping her arm tightly. Bullet and Lubbock looked around. All of them were so eager to jump in and help the Uzumaki. He looked at all of their pleading faces. Bullet couldn't take it anymore. So he let others' feelings get in the way of the mission. Damn it. Fine, let's go, he said, running towards the edge of the alleyway. Akame and Leone rounded the street corner and ran into the direction of a park where flashes of light were brightening up the darkening sky. Both of them sprinted to the center of the park to find one of Naruto's clone locked in a brutal struggle with the beast's clone. "See, come on, you beast," the clone said, looking up at the creature with a smirk. In turn, it looked down at him and snarled. "Naruto!" Leone shouted out, running to the courtyard with Akame hot on her heels. The blonde was barely able to tilt his head in their direction. "Gee, get back," he shouted out. Both of the women froze in their tracks as the creature began to tighten its grip on him, but it didn't notice the gathering of chakra in his right hand. As the chakra began to take shape, it started to look like a Rasengan. But after a few seconds it was clear it wasn't just a Rasengan. A spinning, shuriken-like blade made of wind chakra formed around its outside. Everything next happened in a split second. The beast saw the Just You, and widened its eye. The copy of the blonde smirked, and shoved the Just You into the clone's stomach. "Our Rasen Shuriken," he screamed out, impacting with so much force that a large explosion engulfed the area. Both Naruto's clone and the creature's clone were poofed out of existence. Leone and Akame, who had been shielding their faces from the blast, looked back. Only a crater remained in the square. If that was a clone, then where is the real Naruto? Leone asked. As if on cue, an incredibly large explosion echoed throughout the sky. The two women looked up to see all of the clouds parting and two figures shoot through the opening in the sky. One was clearly Naruto, and the other was that horrid beast. Both of them tumbled down to the earth at high speeds, but yet they still battled. The Uzumaki punched the creature across the face, and in return, the monster kneed him in the stomach. The blonde grunted in pain, and reared his fist back to retaliate. But before Naruto could fully deliver the punch, the creature bit down on the Uzumaki's shoulder as hard as possible. "Ah!" Naruto screamed out as the beast quickly ripped its mouth away, taking a large amount of Naruto's flesh with it. The blonde's eyes looked over in shock to his shoulder as blood flew out of the wound. Before he could do anything, he was met with a massive punch to his chest by the creature. He flew down to the earth at top speed, bleeding severely. Back on the ground, Leone and Akame watched in horror as the scene unfolded. Naruto had been hurt badly by this creature. The man who Leone and Akame thought was invincible was so easily hurt by this thing. It angered both of them. Their instincts to protect Naruto were kicking in. Leone's in particular were acting up as she wouldn't move, even as Naruto came crashing down towards her. "Leone, come on!" Akame shouted out, grabbing her arm and moving her away with her. Leone quickly snapped out of her daze. The two moved to the edge of the square. A moment later, Naruto smashed into the square. Full force. A shockwave blew past the girls as the creature barreled down on top of the Uzumaki. A few seconds later, the creature crashed on top of Naruto's body, creating another shockwave. "No!" Leone screamed out with rage, watching the creature rise from the small crater it had created. Akame, on the other hand, was already rushing the creature with Murasama drawn. The beast paid no mind to her as it picked up Naruto with one hand. The blonde, barely conscious and heavily bleeding, looked up at the creature. Naruto had fought too recklessly with something that was so easy to defeat. He had been too carefree and now he was paying for it. "Child of Kagaya. You lose," the beast said in its gravely voice, as its eye lit up and fired a beam of energy at Naruto's chest. Luckily for the blonde, Akame had reached the creature just in time. Leone was hot on her heels as well. The black-haired assassin swung her blade down on the creature's arm that was holding Naruto. It sliced into its arm, causing the beast to jerk its arm to the side quickly. This in turn caused the attack to miss the center of Naruto's chest. Instead it sliced his entire left arm clean off. Leone and Akame froze as the beast threw the blonde high up into the air. Blood splattered from his shoulder wound and arm. A couple moments later, he smashed into pavement. Leone and Akame immediately ran to his aid as the beast gave off a devilish laugh. Leone picked him up and held him in her arms. She looked down at him, her eyes visibly shaking as she assessed his wound. After a moment her eyes widened as she looked over to the blonde's eyes. They were wide open, yet there was no life in them. "Naruto, come on. Please. Don't do this to me," she pleaded, shaking him and putting her head up to his chest, trying to find his heartbeat. Akame's eyes were wide as well, staring down at the blonde's motionless body. Her mind was starting to break down, looking at him. He couldn't be dead, he just couldn't. She tightened her grip on Murasama as Leonie began to cry into Naruto's chest. The rest of Night Raid had now entered the scene and they all gasped at the sight of Naruto. Akame gritted her teeth, looking up to the creature who waited patiently for them. It seemed like it was enjoying this. She gripped Murasama tighter and screamed out with rage, "You bastard!" She had lost someone close to her. She couldn't stand this. Her judgment was fading quickly. She tried to think of any way Naruto could have survived. He went down way too easily, or was this thing just way too powerful? Leonie stayed back and cradled Naruto into her arms. Sobbing. I didn't even get a chance to mark him, she thought to herself, trying to wipe away the tears. Akame, on the other hand, charged directly at the creature. She knew from her previous attempt that Murasama's poison wouldn't work. She would just have to cut this thing to pieces. The assassin leapt at the monster with rage filling her eyes. The beast narrowed its eye and disappeared in thin air. A moment later, it reappeared directly behind her and grabbed her from behind by the neck. Her eyes widened, realizing what had just happened. Akame! Leonie shouted out as the beast began to squeeze hard on her neck. Ah! Akame screamed out in pain. She struggled and tried to bring Murasama up to stab the beast. In turn, the monster squeezed harder. She was beginning to lose consciousness from the pressure. Was this the end of her? Was she about to die here? Akame! Leonie screamed out, sprinting towards the beast at full speed, followed by the rest of Night Raid. Fueled by rage and anger, Leonie jumped up into the air towards it. She just couldn't take it anymore. The creature was surprisingly calm as it narrowed its eye. It lifted one of its razor-sharp claws up into the air, directly in her flight path. Leonie never saw it coming. Gah! She coughed out, as blood splattered out of her mouth. El Leonie! Akame screamed out in horror, looking over at her best friend. Night Raid all stopped in horror. Leonie gritted her teeth as she hung midair. The creature's claw going straight through her chest. Even with her healing abilities, this was a bit much. Still, with all her strength she punched the creature across the face repeatedly. Akame in the creature's other hand grabbed its arm, and tried to get free. Weak. The monster bellowed out, smashing both of the girls into the ground with enough force to crack the concrete beneath them. The creature stared down at the wounded girls and smirked. It walked forward and began to reach down towards the barely conscious Akame. You'll do. It said, beginning to pick her up. My mistress has plans for you. It smirked again. Akame looked over to Naruto's body. It couldn't end like this. She couldn't leave Naruto. Akame had to at least bury his body. Ah! Tatsumi suddenly shouted out, running at the beast full speed with his sword aimed at the creature. Tatsumi, no! Mine yelled, running out from behind the group followed by Sayo. As Tatsumi approached the monster, the beast stopped reaching for Akame and lunged towards him. It aimed its claws with a smirk. Tatsumi! Mine and Sayo both shouted out, running behind him. They knew he couldn't take this thing on, everyone knew. He knew. Still he would try. He wouldn't give up. Naruto didn't give up, so he wouldn't either. Ah! He cried out with his sword. As the young man approached, the creature simply swiped his claws forward, slicing the boy's sword in half. Tatsumi was left in shock, as the creature followed with a powerful punch. He was sent flying back into Mine and Sayo. His impact caused all three of them to fly back and crash into Night Raid. Only Bullet was left standing. The monster narrowed its eye at him. Bullet, in turn, raised his spear defensively. The beast chuckled and began to approach him, but suddenly stopped when it felt a hand wrap around its leg. It looked down to see Leonie gripping onto its leg. Blood covered much of her torso, and various organs could be seen hanging out of her body. She was barely hanging on to life. The abomination chuckled once again and raised its foot, causing her to lose her weak grip. It aimed its foot above her head and slammed down. Leonie closed her eyes and braced for impact. She didn't even feel a thing. Huh? She asked, opening her eyes and looking up. What she saw next made her heart skip a beat. Naruto stood above her, holding the beast's foot with one hand. She looked at his body and noticed all the wounds had healed. The arm he lost was now replaced with Kurama's glowing orange chakra. It took the shape of his lost arm and a split second later the chakra burst away. Replacing it was a new, fully formed arm. And Naruto? Leonie asked weakly, beginning to succumb to her wounds. Naruto quickly pushed the beast away with one hand. A neutral expression remained on his face the entire time. The monster flew back and fell over. The blonde paid it no mind, and picked Leonie up. Chakra seemed to radiate off his body as her body began to heal. All her organs moved back into place, and the hole closed up. She smiled softly, licking his ear, marking him. He carried Leonie over to Akame and picked her up with his other hand. He looked down at her bruised neck and frowned. Her face was pale white and she showed signs of losing blood to her head. But as with Leonie, the moment he touched her, the bruises on her neck instantly began heal, and color returned to her face. After looking over Akame for a moment and setting Leonie down, he passed the still unconscious black-haired assassin to Leonie without a word. As he did this, the 10 tails look-alike recovered and looked over to Naruto. The blonde turned back to it, and grit his teeth. "You hurt 2 of my precious people. Something I can never forgive anyone for," he screamed out, a burst of violent bright orange chakra exploding from his body. The monster backed away out of fear. Naruto instantly made 5 clones, and looked back at them. A new chakra cloak quickly formed into a bright yellow coat with a black bodysuit underneath. 2 chakra horns appeared in Naruto's hair. A black bodysuit covered his torso, it reached down his arms, and to his knuckles. It also reaching down his legs to the point just above his sandals. He had 9 strange-looking orbs behind him, and 2 black staff-like objects in each hand. Finally his usual ocean blue eyes turned into a light yellow, his pupils became a cross of vertical fox slits and horizontal toad slats. "Get them all out of here," he commanded to his clone, turning to them. They all complied, and ran over to Night Raid. Within a split second, they all formed the Hiraishin no Jutsu around the group, and disappeared. Naruto turned back to the beast with a pissed-off expression. Leonie stood behind him with the unconscious Akame. The blonde lowered his head, and began to speak. "I've realized now. I've been going too easy on this world. A world filled with demons. Although it has tried, I will never fall to this world's evil ways." He looked up at the monster eyes filled with passion and hope. "I will save them," he shouted with valor, motioning his hand back to Akame and Leonie. Behind him Leon's senses were going haywire. Naruto had just received a major powerful boost. Everything about him seemed different. She was clearly attracted to him more, as she couldn't lay her eyes off of him. The Uzumaki just seemed so powerful. Naruto stood definitely, as the creature tried to intimate him with a roar. But it wouldn't work on him, the blonde had gone all out for this. As the creature stopped its roar, Naruto lifted one of his chakra rods. He pointed it at the beast and narrowed his eyes. "I will be the will of fire that defends this world. But most of all I will protect Akame and Leonie. No matter the cost," he shouted, lunging towards the beast. Back in the now deserted fountain area where Koro's body now laid, one of Naruto's lone clones appeared in the area. He walked up to the corpse and turned it over. The blonde looked down to see an unconscious, battered and bruised Seiryu Ubiquitous. She only survived by having the hole in Koro's body land on top of her. The clone smiled slightly and picked her up before disappearing into thin air, leaving the area deserted again, with only Koro's corpse. Thanks for watching.